slapped the vending machine. This thing isn't getting... The moment I heard Dad snoring, I crept downstairs and took his motorcycle keys. I was 13 and had been binge-watching videos of motorcycles hitting 150-mile speeds and desperately wanted to ride one. My dad's Kawasaki superbike sat in our garage. You could die, or even worse, destroy my bike. So one night, I had enough and snuck out. My heart was pounding as I pulled the covers off the Kawasaki. I started working the keys, but I couldn't turn it on. Finally, I twisted the handlebar, and the motorcycle lurched forward way too fast for me to control. I twisted the brakes and it slammed to a stop so fast I went flying. I hit the pavement and bruised my elbow, and through the window, I saw my dad getting out of bed. I instantly panicked and jumped back on the Kawasaki. I twisted the throttle and slowly took off, turning out of the driveway before he could see me. My heart slammed and I gripped the handlebars so tight my knuckles turned white. Me and my family were walking through Times Square when suddenly every billboard had my face plastered across it. I froze in
everything they love.
I woke up at 4 a.m. to screaming from my son's room, but when I walked inside, I instantly started coughing. My 15-year-old Jacob was smoking cigarettes and loudly gaming with his buddies. I didn't even know he smoked, so I crossed the room with my breath held and unplugged his PlayStation. "You're going to bed. We'll talk about the smoking tomorrow." But he turned to me with these manic eyes and screamed, "Give me back my PlayStation." He put his cigarette out on my arm, and I immediately backed up as it burned. "Okay, we're seriously having a talk." I walked out of his room and locked him in for the night while he screamed, "You'll regret this." Next morning, I was waiting downstairs to talk, but Jacob stormed down with a stack of papers and dropped them on the table. "I'm suing you. I want emancipation and $5,000 in legal damages." My stomach twisted as I picked up the papers, and when I looked up, he was lighting a cigarette. "That's right. I don't want you to be my dad anymore." He blew the smoke at my face and walked out. That evening, Jacob yelled at me from his room, "Dad, I need $200 to hire a lawyer for the court." I laughed because I still didn't think he was serious. But that night I woke up to something rustling in my room. My eyes shot open and I saw Jacob going through my wallet. My heart shattered seeing my own son stealing from me, but I just pretended to be asleep, then slid my phone over and pressed record. He tiptoed out with all $300 from my wallet, but I had the evidence. 2 weeks later, I stood in court as Jacob Fake cried on the stand that I'm abusive and he's scared of me. I don't want him to be my dad, and I want $5,000 for emotional damages. He pointed at me like I was an animal. My hands shook, and I pulled out the video of him stealing my money, but he began screaming before the judge could even look at it. "See? He records me without my consent. That's the abuse I'm talking about." My stomach sank as the judge looked at Jacob. "You believe you can care for yourself?" Jacob smirked. "Better than that faker ever could." I felt my whole body go cold because those words hurt so much, but that's when the judge smiled at me. "In that case, emancipation granted." He banged his gavel, and Jacob immediately jumped out of his seat, cheering and throwing both middle fingers in my face. But then the judge kept talking. "This means, Jacob, that from today, you pay your own rent, food, and legally follow every rule your father gives you since he's now your landlord. Your first $1,000 rent payment is due in a month." My son's arms dropped mid-celebration. "Wait, I don't have any money." But the judge shrugged. "Fail to pay, and you'll be arrested. This is what you wanted." Jacob's face went pale. "No, I don't want to go to jail. Can I reverse the decision?" The judge simply shook his head. I walked up to Jacob and put my hand on his shoulder. "If I see you light just one cigarette, I'm kicking you out. I expect rent on the first." I walked out while he sobbed in the courtroom and lit up my own cigarette to mock him. I woke up at 4 a.m. to...
If you get
I woke up at 4 a.m. The moment I heard Dad snoring, me and my family were walking through Times Square when suddenly I went to a Marriott ballroom for econ extra credit and ended up running from a man in a three-piece suit calling himself Maximus Masters. Noah signed our names on the extra credit sheet and pushed open the doors. Free steak and a grade bump? I'd sit through my own funeral for that. A woman in a navy blazer was on us before the doors swung shut. "Welcome, future entrepreneurs. I'm Crystal." She slapped name tags on our chests that read, "Guest of Honor," and steered us to the front row with a hand on each of our backs. "Where's the bar?" Noah asked. After the presentation, Crystal sang and disappeared into the crowd. 60 people sat around us, wearing the same same wide smile, staring at an empty stage. Nobody was talking. I don't see anyone from our class, Noah whispered. Maybe we're early. Dude, the room is full. The lights cut out and techno music shook the floor. 2 fog machines fired smoke across the stage, and a man in a 3-piece suit walked through it with his arms over his head. Who wants to be financially free? The room exploded as people shot out of their seats, pumping fists. We didn't move. Is this extra credit or a hostage situation? Noah whispered. For 40 minutes, Maximus paced the stage, ranting about yachts and cellular metabolism powder. Slide after slide behind him of him holding stacks of cash. A guy 2 rows back stood up sobbing about how he used to work at Subway. It's a pyramid scheme, Noah said. I nodded and started to stand, but Crystal materialized behind us. Leaving? You haven't seen the compensation structure. She pressed down on my shoulder. Sit. We sat. When it finally ended, she pulled out an iPad and asked which package spoke to us. We're just here for class credit, I told her. Her smile cracked. You're scared of success. People like us retire at 30. The whole room turned to watch. Maximus walked over, sweat soaking through his collar, and put a hand on each of our shoulders. Gentlemen, let me introduce you to the man who changed my life. The fog machines kicked on again. An older man in a white suit stepped through the smoke onto the stage. Noah's hand clamped around my forearm. Dude, that's our prof. Professor Jacobson smiled at me from the stage. The same wide smile Crystal had. The same smile the Subway guy had. The same smile every single person in that room had been wearing since we sat down. He tapped the microphone twice. Welcome, gentlemen. Let's talk about your extra credit. We ran. I went to a Marriott ballroom. I was setting up camp alone in a forest when I heard explosions nearby and smoke hit my nostrils. I followed the noise and found a teenager laughing, lighting fireworks into the trees, filming himself on a tripod, live on TikTok. This is going to go so viral, but the forest was bone dry, and one spark could burn the whole thing down. Stop! You're gonna start a fire! Relax, bruh. I know what I'm doing. Then he lit another, and the firework arced up, landed in a bush, and flames tore through the leaves. My balls dropped because we had minutes before this forest went up in flames. I stomped at the flames, screaming for the kid to help, but he swung his camera toward the fire, grinning. Yo, this is even better content. I need more fire. The fire climbed a tree behind me, and families came sprinting past, coughing and screaming, dragging their kids from the smoke. I looked back and saw my own tent swallowed in flames, everything I owned gone. I yelled, "Is going viral worth this?" I grabbed his arm to pull him out, but he yanked away. "You don't get it. I have to do this." And he stepped toward the fire for a better shot. The smoke was so thick my eyes burned and every breath became shorter. If I didn't run now, the flames would swallow me too. So I turned to run, but a burning tree cracked and crashed down behind me, and through the flames I saw the kid's arm shoot up, a hospital wristband on his wrist, as he screamed for help. My body screamed at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I couldn't let him die, so I turned back and ran into the flames. I grabbed his arm as he cried, a hospital band melting against my palm. I picked him up as I ran away from the fire and I yelled, "Why would you do this?" He lifted his shaking wrist, tears streaming. "My little sister has cancer. They told us if we don't get money for her treatment soon, she'll die." He looked down. "I just don't want her to die. I'm sorry." My throat closed, but before I could respond, firefighters and police charged in. "You've got the little arsonist who did this for views. Criminal. We saw his live," an officer yelled, but the kid just lowered his head as they slapped cuffs on him. Everyone will call him a monster, but I knew the truth. I was setting up I was at work when my boss yanked me into his office by my collar. "Bring a real llama to this office in 2 hours, or you're fired." He grinned, because we both knew it was impossible. "The CEO gets here at noon. There's no way you'll pull this off, so I'll start packing your desk right now." I looked down at my phone, and my lock screen lit up with my 2 dogs. If I lost this job, they'd be on the street with me. I wasn't about to let that happen, so I had 2 hours to pull off the impossible. I bolted out of the office and onto the sidewalk, sweating. There's only one place in New York City with a llama, so I flagged a cab and sped uptown to the zoo. I ran to the front gate and begged the keeper, "Please, I just need to borrow a llama for 1 hour." He laughed in my face. Absolutely not. I only had 40 minutes left. I thought of my dogs living on the street, and I knew I couldn't walk away empty-handed. So I snuck around to the back pens, unlatched the gate, and grabbed a llama by its rope, but it spit a wad of green slime across my face. Before I could pull it away, a keeper spotted me. "Hey, he's stealing a llama!" So I ran, dragging the llama down the street as people dove out of the way. No cab would take an animal, so I hauled it onto the subway. When I got to the office, I threw open the doors, but my boss was standing at my empty shuddered until a scream ripped through the office behind me. I spun around, and the llama had broken loose, trampling desks and spitting on every person in its path. Then it reared back and launched a glob of slime right into the CEO's face. My boss stared in horror, and a vein bulged in the CEO's forehead as he stormed straight toward us. "Who is responsible for this?" But the llama trotted to my side and pressed its head against my arm, calm. Before he could speak, I pointed at my boss. He told me to bring a llama or I'd be fired. The CEO's eyes went cold, and he jabbed a finger at my boss. "Clear your desk. You're fired." Then he looked at me. "You can keep your job and the llama." As I unpacked my photos with my dog back onto my desk, my boss grabbed the llama's rope, and it spit a thick glob of slime across his face. I was at work when my boss yanked me into his office by my collar. I walked into the doctor's office for a sore leg, but the second he saw me, he decided I needed surgery. I got wheeled away with no explanation and was put under while still asking questions. I woke up 10 hours later and saw 4 police officers standing around my bed. I tried to move, and that's when I noticed I was handcuffed to the railing. The doctor who prescribed the surgery was standing in the corner tapping his foot. I freaked out. "What's going on?" And the lead detective walked over and pulled out an X-ray taken of my stomach during surgery. I turned to the doctor. "Why were you operating on my stomach?" "I have leg pain." He looked around frantically, but the detective immediately shoved the photo in my face. A small rectangle was at my spleen. "Your surgeon found this sewn into your abdominal lining." The detective held up a huge bag of fentanyl, 130 grams, a trafficking charge carrying a 20-year sentence. My jaw dropped. I've never touched drugs in my life. The detective rolled his eyes, but that's when the surgeon jumped in completely unprompted. "Just arrest him already. The evidence is clear." I looked at his red face and the sweat on his forehead and wondered why he looked so nervous. The detectives pulled out handcuffs, but that's when I remembered something. I'd had an X-ray on my stomach last week at a different hospital. There was nothing in my body then. But as soon as I said this, the surgeon snapped up. "X-rays aren't reliable," he shouted. "They probably missed it." The detective looked at the surgeon carefully, then back over at me. "We're taking you in." They uncuffed me and cuffed my hands behind my back. At the station, they kept asking about drugs. I kept telling them I didn't know. And after 5 hours, a prosecutor told me they were filing charges tomorrow. I was looking at 20 years minimum. I didn't sleep at all. And the next morning, the detective who arrested me walked in. He unlocked my cell and placed a binder in front of me. I opened them, expecting to see the charges. Instead, it was official papers telling me I was free to go if I signed here. I did it immediately, asking him why I was free all of a sudden, and that's when he showed me his phone. Surveillance footage from my surgery, showing my doctor stitching the bag of fentanyl into my abdomen, but also a GPS tracker. The cartel was after him because he has their fentanyl, so he stitched it in you and put a tracker there to lead them astray. I suggest getting it removed immediately. I walked into the doctor's office. I cracked my knuckles while loading up my League of Legends game. I only had 10 minutes until my bedtime, and was only 1 win away from hitting Diamond, so I wasn't letting anything stop me. I typed in my login faster than ever, then the 2-factor authentication code, and when the terms and conditions box showed up, I quickly hit accept and leaned in to get ready to destroy some 12-year-olds. But suddenly, 3 men stormed in wearing black suits and dark sunglasses out of nowhere. But the game was about to start, so I was determined to keep my eyes on the screen. But one of them unplugged my monitor, so I was forced to stand up and find out what was going on. "What the hell? Who are you?" Another started wrapping up my wires without saying anything. I immediately turned around and saw my little brother standing in the corner, smiling. I knew he had something to do with this, so I stormed over and grabbed him by the collar. "What did you do?" He crossed his arms. "You're the one who clicked accept." I had no idea what he was talking about, but then he walked me back to the chair, shoved me his phone, and showed me what I had agreed to. One line was highlighted. "By clicking accept, you give your entire gaming setup to your little brother Eli." I laughed, because there was no way this was real. "You're 10, you can't own my stuff." He put his hand on his hip and showed me a photo of his empty piggy bank. "I know you stole money from my birthday money to pay for all of this, and I just got it back." Behind me, the last guy gripped my chair and pulled it out from under me. I hit the floor. I got up and followed Eli across the hall. My whole setup was glowing in Eli's room. My game was still on the screen. The 1 win away from Diamond 1 never got to play, and Eli was already in the chair. He loaded into my game, and he played it like it was nothing. 1 team fight, an ace, and victory filled the screen. Diamond. Eli leaned back in my chair and finally looked over at me. "Thought you were gonna destroy some 12-year-olds? Well, you just got destroyed by a 10-year-old. And as I stood there watching myself getting defeated by my little brother who robbed me blind, some Logan slammed $1,000 on our dorm table. Tomorrow, we're all going to the airport with no money, and the one who can get to the furthest country wins. It's a college competition. I immediately signed the sign-up sheet because my mom had never left the state before, and this was my chance to make her dream of going to Disneyland come true. I clicked the pen and grinned. May the best man win. The next morning, all 5 of us walked into LAX with empty wallets, and Logan lifted up 3 fingers. We start in 3, 2, 1. I sprinted for the airline counters with money on my mind. Please, I need a free flight to win a competition for my mom. You got me, right? The agent laughed at me. Right, and I'm looking for free Jordans because I don't want to pay for new shoes. You got me, right? He was making fun of me, so I frantically searched the airport because I knew I needed a new strategy. A woman 2 seats down propped her giant suitcase against the charging station and answered her phone. Yeah, Mom, I land in Dublin tonight. Love you. My entire face lit up because I knew Dublin was a city in Ireland, and it was 5,000 miles away. She headed for the bathroom without her suitcase, so I dumped her clothes into my backpack, folded myself inside, and pulled the zipper shut with my teeth. 10 minutes later, I was swinging through the terminal, slamming into every doorframe in California while I was curled up like a pretzel, until someone grunted and rammed me into an overhead bin with my knees in my eye sockets. By the time I climbed in, the group chat was already flexing. Logan posted a selfie from a party bus to Mexico, and I grinned because I thought I was going to beat him. The engines roared, the bin rattled, and I fell asleep picturing my mom standing outside the Disney castle holding a giant cotton candy. A loud thud woke me up, and I was certain 16 hours had passed, and I was on a whole new continent. The second the bin clicked open, I exploded out with both fists in the air and screamed, I won. A flight attendant dropped her clipboard, and the suitcase woman screamed louder than I did. Then the pilot's voice came through the speakers. Welcome to Dublin, one of the most beautiful cities in California, folks. Flight time today was 45 minutes. My face fell because I thought we were going to Europe, but we hadn't even left the state. When security grabbed me to walk me out, I made a request. If you guys arrest me, can you at least put me in a jail in Argentina so I can win my competition? My Uncle Tom's face scrunched up when I asked for a water break 2 hours into photographing my cousin's 7th birthday party, dizzy and dehydrated under the sun. I'm not paying you $20 to drink water. The party's only 4 hours. He grabbed my cake plate out of my hand later that afternoon. You can eat after the job's done. I stood there swaying slightly while he checked his watch, and my hands were still shaking from hunger by the time he pulled up his phone at the end of the party to show me a fitness influencer. I need these photos edited. Make my wife look like this. I nodded, thinking I could survive 1 more week of him before I never had to work for family again. I sent him 20 cleaned up photos that week. That's no good, he texted back within the hour. Make my wife skinnier, give her more curves, wider hips, smaller waist, make my arms more muscular, and remove my brother's Rolex from the picture. Make sure I'm the best looking guy in every shot. I stared at my phone, stunned. This will take weeks, I typed back. Then work faster. I need these by tomorrow. I really needed the money for college, so I spent all night hunched over my laptop, frantically editing the photos. Then one more text lit up my screen. Oh yeah, make me the tallest person in every group shot. Something in me finally snapped clean in half. I called an emergency family meeting the next day and connected my laptop to the TV. I'm done with Uncle Tom's BS, and before anyone judges me, let me show you why. I pulled up his texts and the before and after photos, which included edits of him stretched taller than his own brother, his arms bulked up, and his wife's body reshaped into something she'd never recognize. My aunt stood up slowly, staring at the screen with her hand over her mouth. That looks nothing like me. Were you lying when you said I was perfect just the way I was? Uncle Tom shot to his feet and pointed at me. You had no right to show those messages, I laughed, and you had no right to treat me like garbage for 20 measly dollars. That same night, my aunt grabbed his phone off the counter and found him setting up dating profiles using the edited photos he'd demanded. Every screenshot became evidence in her divorce filing 3 weeks later. My Uncle Tom.
He knows what a gallon of gas.
I was doing laundry late at night when I opened the dryer and found a huge duffel bag stuffed inside. My balls dropped, and I was too scared to touch it, so I tried another machine, but everyone had an out-of-order sign. When I bent to move the bag, it was so heavy my arms shook, and the second I dropped it, it fell open. My heart shattered. A big pit bull was crammed inside, covered in bruises and deep scars. I've had dogs my whole life, so I knew these weren't an accident. Anger filled my body as I swore to find out who did this. I took the pit bull home, cleaned his wounds, and fed him until he stopped shaking. By morning, he was curled against me, the sweetest boy, and it only made me angrier. The next night, I brought him along and parked across from the laundromat, waiting to see if they'd come back. And around midnight, a truck pulled up, and a man hauled a squirming duffel bag inside. Another dog. The second he drove off, I ran in, pulled the trembling dog from the dryer, set him in my car, and sped after the truck. It led me down a dirt road to a rundown farmhouse, and what I saw made my stomach drop. I peeked in and saw dozens of dogs, chained and caged, scarred just like mine. sign, around a ring. My hands shook as I started recording and called the police, whispering the address, but a floorboard creaked behind me. "You lost, bruh?" He was smiling, and he'd caught the whole thing. "Snitches don't leave here." He whistled, and every dog in that yard charged straight at me. I braced myself as the pack charged, certain it was over. But out of nowhere, my two dogs shot in front of me and stood their ground, growling at the others. The attacking dogs skidded to a halt, thrown off. Then I heard it, whimpering behind me, cage after cage of trapped dogs. I spun around and ripped the doors open one by one. "What are you doing?" the man screamed, kicking his boot into a dog to scare the rest. "Attack him, stupid!" But that was the worst thing he could have done. Every dog froze, then slowly turned on him, their teeth bared, the same rage in their eyes he'd beaten into them. They lunged, but I couldn't let them become the monster he'd made them. "Hey," I said softly, "we don't do that anymore. It's okay." Then the cops flooded in, slamming him to the ground. The dogs wagged their tails, no longer weapons, just dogs. I was closing our McDonald's when a guy built like a delivery truck started pounding on the glass. I cracked the door to say, "We're closed, buddy. Come back tomorrow." But he walked straight through me into the lobby and yelled his order at the empty store. "Get me 10 burgers, 7 fries, and 5 Coke Zero." I tried pushing him back out. "Buddy, the grill is turned off. Come back tomorrow." But he pushed me back and I went flying over the counter. Then he grabbed the counter with both hands and something metal on his wrist clacked against it. "You don't understand. I will die without my burgers." My limbs trembled and I backed toward the kitchen. But he followed me and yelled his order again. 10 burgers, 7 fries, 5 Coke Zero. But then my manager stepped out from behind the grill. He was part-time Mr. Olympia and a full head bigger than the guy. He walked up until they were chest to chest and glared at the customer. "We're closed. Get out or I'll throw you out." But the guy didn't move. "My burgers. Give me my burgers or I'll die." My manager backed him all the way into the glass and he was still begging for the food. And that's when I noticed he was sweating through his shirt in a cold lobby. His hands shook so hard the metal band on his wrist rattled against the glass. So I thought to myself, nobody begs for food like this unless something's truly wrong. That's when the big guy took 3 huge breaths and just dropped. He slammed onto the floor and cracked our tiles and our manager gasped. I ran over and knelt down to check on him and I finally noticed what was on his wrist. It was a medical bracelet with the words, "Need daily burgers. Feed me if I pass out." I couldn't believe his words about dying if he didn't get his burgers were actually true. So I grabbed a half-eaten burger from a nearby table and shoved it down his mouth. Then I opened my phone and dialed 911 while my manager fired up the grill behind me and started making those 10 burgers, 7 fries, and 5 Coke Zero.
Welcoming summer with a dinner.
A kid from school dumped maple syrup over my Canadian jersey. "That's what you get, maple syrup boy." The entire street turned to laugh, and I buried my head in my hands because I couldn't take being bullied for being Canadian anymore. I grabbed the 4th of July festival I grabbed the last bag of BBQ chips off the shelf, but 2 kids snatched it from my hands and held it high over their heads. I was 4'2" and officially a midget, so when I jumped for it, I barely reached their shoulders. They pulled out their phones. "Go on, little man, jump," and hysterically laughed. My face burned with shame, but I kept jumping because these chips were discontinued. I had driven to 13 stores for this last bag, and nothing was stopping me from getting them. They waved it over my head for the 10th time, but then a hand came from the sky. A 7-foot man was holding the chips up over punks' heads, his phone out. "Go on, jump for it." They jumped but couldn't even reach his chest and stormed off embarrassed. I smiled up at him, but he was already looking at the label. Barbecue, my favorite. He opened the bag right there and literally stepped over me to keep walking. I swung as hard as I could and missed by so much I almost spun out of the box. It was the bottom of the 9th. We had a runner on 3rd, 2 outs, down by 1. The ump dropped into his squat behind me. "Just put the ball in play, kid." I looked up at my dad in the bleachers and winked. "I'm hitting this one over, Dad." He cupped his hands around his mouth. "Send it, bud." The next pitch came in slow and right down the middle. I swung as hard as I'd ever swung in my life, and the ball cleared the fence by 10 feet. I dropped the bat and started running. Rounding first, I looked up at the bleachers to find my dad. He wasn't standing up. He was supposed to be standing up. He was the loudest one in the bleachers, and now he was just sitting with his hand on his chest. My mom was right next to him watching me through her phone, screaming, "Run, run, run," second base. Dad still wasn't moving. By 3rd, I was barely barely running. He fell forward over the bleacher rail and I stopped halfway between third and home. Dad! I dropped the helmet and started running off the field toward my dad. The ump had my dad on the ground pumping his chest with both hands. I fell to my knees and grabbed my dad's hand. My mom was on the phone with 911 screaming our address. 5 minutes later, the ambulance pulled up and the paramedics got him on a gurney. As they were loading him in, his eyes opened and found mine. I saw it, bud. His grip tightened on my hand. I've never been prouder. Then they slid him in and the doors closed. I hit the only home run of my life and my dad lived to see it. He keeps the ball on his nightstand. I was sitting in class when a Smurf walked in. It was my professor, painted head to toe blue with a white hat and everything. Half the class started laughing. He didn't react at all. He just set his bag down and started teaching like nothing was different. The girl next to me leaned over and whispered, "It's Smurf Day." I asked her what that meant. She just looked at me and said, "You'll see." After class, I grabbed one of the older students and asked him what was going on. He sat me down on a bench outside and told me the whole story. A few years back, the professor had a 3-year-old daughter. She was diagnosed with a rare brain disease and spent most of her life in a hospital bed. The Smurfs was her favorite show. Every night after his last class, he'd drive straight to the hospital and sit in the chair next to her bed and watch it with her. She'd rest her head on his arm, and they'd watch every episode together until she fell asleep. He was a single dad. He couldn't stop teaching because that's how he paid for her treatment. So every morning he'd leave her in that hospital room and walk into a classroom and pretend he was fine. He'd come in with red eyes and nobody said a word. Eventually, some of his students found out what was happening and put together enough money for him to take time off. He got to spend her last few weeks with her because of them. She passed away 3 days after his last class. Every year on her birthday, he walks into class painted blue from head to toe. He never explains it. He never talks about it. He just teaches the whole lecture looking like a Smurf because it was the last thing that made her smile. I was 12 and starving when I threw a chain over the electric fence around Mr. Hatch's apple tree. Sparks shot up everywhere and the wires went dead. My little sister was watching from under the bridge with Tommy and 4 others, gripping the moldy loaf we'd been splitting for 3 days. Mr. Hatch's porch looked down on that bridge. All week he'd been on it biting into apples and yelling at us. "These apples are the sweetest in town, rats. You'll never know." Tonight I was going to know. I climbed over and tiptoed across wet grass toward the tree. A stick snapped under my foot loud enough to wake a graveyard. I froze, but the house stayed dark. 3 steps later, motion lights flooded the whole yard. A door slammed open and Mr. Hatch came charging out in his bathrobe. "Get your hands off my apples, you little rat." I sprinted to the tree, jumped onto the lowest branch, and climbed as fast as I could. He came barreling across the grass with his head craned up at me and caught his foot on the chain I'd thrown across the wires. He flew shoulder first into the trunk so hard the whole tree shook. An apple the size of my fist dropped straight down and clocked him on the forehead. He went face down in the grass and didn't move. I whistled twice from up in the branches. Tommy was first over the fence with the rest piling in behind him. They stood under the tree with shirts held open while I dropped apples down until every shirt was full. Mr. Hatch woke up to bare branches. Under the bridge that night, my little sister got the biggest one and we ate until our stomachs hurt. Turns out he was right about one thing. They really were the sweetest in town. My principal tried to shut down my silly band's business 4 times before he gave up. At recess on Monday, a first grader handed me $1 and I peeled the glow-in-the-dark unicorn off my wrist and dropped it on his. Behind him, a dozen more kids were waiting their turn, all holding quarters. A second grader tried to trade me a half-eaten Reese's and I told him cash only. By Friday, I had more cash than my babysitter made in a week, and Mr. Doyle was watching me from across the playground with his arms crossed. The next day, I was in math class when I heard Mr. Doyle on the intercom. "Effective immediately. No silly bands are permitted in the classroom." I rolled my stack into my pencil case before he finished talking. At recess, I sold from the bathroom line while he prowled the playground checking wrists. The next day, he was back on the intercom. "No silly bands are permitted anywhere on school property." After the bell, I set up shop on the sidewalk 6 inches past the school gate. Kids poured out and lined up while Mr. Doyle rushed to the property line, gripping the fence as every dollar went into my pocket. A couple days passed and I was sitting on the couch when my mom answered the phone and I heard Mr. Doyle's voice. "Your son is running an unsanctioned business outside our school and I need you to put a stop to it." She covered the phone and turned to me. "How much have you made?" I held up the wad and told her $92. She got back on the phone and said, "Sounds like he's learning," and hung up. Then that Friday, Mr. Doyle stood at the gate watching me set up the line. He didn't say anything, didn't take notes. He just shook his head, turned around, and walked back inside. The next morning, he stopped me in the hallway. I tightened my grip on my arm because I figured he was finally taking my stash. He pulled a wrinkled dollar bill out of his pocket. "My daughter wants the glow-in-the-dark mermaid." I slid it off my wrist and put it in his palm. "Cash only." Eric opened my snack cabinet and groaned, "There's no snacks in here." I stared at the Pringles, the ice cream, the Doritos, and chocolate candies. "What do you mean there's no snacks?" snacks. Eric looked at me with red eyes and a goofy smile. I'm on the munchies, bro. I want Cheetos. The only open store is a 90-minute walk. Just eat the Doritos. Eric slammed the cabinet closed. I want Cheetos, dude. I groaned and put on my jacket. We stepped outside and Eric rubbed his hands. The walk will go quickly, dude. Trust me. But 5 minutes and heavy rain started pouring. My hair got wet and my pants immediately became drenched. Eric, let's turn back. You don't even have a jacket. But Eric smiled and put his arm around me. The longer the path, the louder the crunch, bro. I gave in and continued, my shoes squelching with every step. But then we reached the most dangerous street in the city. Maps showed this was the only way. And when I looked back, I saw a sketchy man in a hood behind us. I felt my heartbeat in my throat and instantly tapped Eric's shoulder. Let's go home. Someone's following us. But Eric just kept walking, smiling to himself and thinking about the Cheetos. I turned around and saw the man closer now. I caught a glimpse of the knife in his pocket and the paranoia kicked in. Eric, dude, he's behind us. He's got a knife. We have to go, man. We have to go. Eric simply turned around and stared right at him. Him? Nah, he's just vibing. Just focus on the Cheetos, bro. He turned back around and I began leading us down the weirdest turns and alleys until we finally lost him. I asked Eric to just call an Uber home the whole way, but he kept assuring me the Cheetos would be worth it. We finally reached the store and stepped inside, wet and soaking, my hands shaking because we'd nearly been killed. Eric walked to the Cheetos and picked them up. He looked at them closely, then shook his head. Actually, man, I don't really want these. He put them back, and I flailed my arms in anger and disbelief. Eric grabbed my shoulder. Bro, they were $2. I'm not paying $2. I can just eat the Doritos back at your place. My friend Darren laced up his new Jordans and pumped his fist in the air. Now I can jump like Jordan. I held back my laugh. No disrespect, Darren, but you're 350 pounds. You can't jump like Jordan. But he looked past me, and his eyes settled on the rim like he was ready to soar. If I hang on that rim, you owe me $100. I instantly shook his hand, ready to collect the easiest money of my life. Darren walked under the rim and rubbed his new shoes. Just like MJ, baby. He squatted down and jumped as high as he could. His arms stretched through the air and he almost touched the net. His face deflated and he looked at his new shoes like they'd betrayed him. Told you, dude. Now give me my $100. I walked over, but Darren walked past me. I'm going to touch that rim. He dragged a chair from one side of the gym to under the hoop. Then he stacked another. He stacked 4 chairs until they reached the rim, then put his foot on the first one. Darren, are you seriously? I want to be like MJ, he interrupted. The chairs creaked and a leg splintered as he climbed, and I looked away because I couldn't watch him fall. But he reached the top and grabbed the rim with both hands. Told you I could jump like Jordan. He hung on the rim, but then the mount of the rim cracked. I froze, and Darren's face dropped as we heard another crack. I'm getting down, but right as he put his foot on the chair, a spiderweb crack shot across the glass. The whole backboard exploded, and Darren fell backwards, clutching the snapped rim. He bounced off the chair pile and dropped to the floor. I ran over. Oh my God, Darren, are you okay? He smiled with his front tooth missing. I don't think I can jump like Jordan, but at least I can break backboards like Shaquille O'Neal. He reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet while still on the floor. What? I touched the rim, didn't I? My dad came home beaming, saying he'd just met a guy in a black coat and a top hat who showed him how to hypnotize himself. He immediately turned the TV to a dead channel and sat 2 feet from the static, reading the instructions. Watch static for 30 minutes. Cover your eyes and listen to the static for another 30 minutes. When the hour is up, you'll be hypnotized for 4 hours. My dad raised his finger and said, he told me anything I see during those 4 hours isn't real. I rolled my eyes and went to my room as he started watching the static. But then, an hour passed, and I heard the front door open. I froze, because the man in a black coat and top hat was standing in the middle of our living room, holding an empty duffel bag. He started shoving our jewelry inside it, while Dad sat on the couch, staring at him and smiling peacefully. He said aloud, "Wow, the hypnotization is working." The man told me if I hallucinate him later, it means it worked. I couldn't believe it, and lunged for my phone on the coffee table. But the man grabbed it and pulled a gun from his waistband. One wrong move, and I shoot. Sit down. I sat frozen, with my hands shaking in my lap. I looked at my dad, and he just smiled at me, like everything was fine. The shouting is very vivid. He warned me about the audio component. I stared in disbelief. My own dad was watching a stranger rob us and smiling about it. The man started unmounting the TV, and I yelled, "Dad, he's taking the TV." Dad just smiled. "There is no TV. There is only peace." The man walked past Dad carrying the TV, and Dad reached out and patted the man's leg. "Goodbye, hallucination." I pinched myself because I was sure I was dreaming, but my face dropped in horror because I wasn't. The man came back with my PlayStation and laptop. He leaned over Dad and slid the wallet out of his jacket pocket, then asked asked Dad, "How's the hypnotization?" Dad beamed, "Super realistic," and the man laughed. He walked across the room toward the side table where Dad's watch was. I was in shock, and the second his back was turned, I ran to Dad and slapped him hard across the face. "Dad, this is real! We're being robbed!" But Dad smiled wider, his cheek going red. "Wow, the hypnotization is so cool. I can even feel pain as if someone actually slapped me." "Dad, he has a gun," I said, almost crying. Dad looked right at the man's gun, bliss on his face. He warned me the trance might include weapons. They aren't real either. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it. The man took the watch and zipped his loaded duffel bag. He walked past me, tipped his hat while laughing, and walked out the front door. I sat there shaking, looking at half of our house cleared out. Everything was silent except for Dad humming on the couch, smiling at nothing. 4 hours later, the timer beeped. Dad blinked and stretched his arms. "Wow, that was vivid," he laughed. "I even saw him take our TV. The mind is amazing." He sat up and looked at the wall where our TV used to be. His smile faded. "Son, where's our TV?" My dad would pat my shoulder and say, "This is the year, kid. I can feel it." Every Knicks playoffs for 25 years, and he died the summer before they finally made the finals. Now, it was the Knicks' first finals since 1999. So for the last game, I laced up my Timbs, pulled on my dad's old Ewing jersey, and flipped my Yankees hat backwards. Timbs in June and all. I got my son in his little Brunson jersey, lifted him onto my shoulders, and told him the same thing. He was wrong every time, all the way back to watching these same Spurs beat them in 5 games from his knee, but he never stopped believing. And this year was different, because we had Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, McCall Bridges, Cat Daddy, and the heart of the garden, Josh Hart. If you believed in miracles, you had to believe in these Knicks. So we shoved into Times Square with 50,000 other believers. My son gripped my shoulders every time the square went quiet. "Dad, are we gonna lose?" he asked, and I told him to watch. Brunson was hooping on the big screens, his name bouncing off the buildings, and my dad would have loved this kid. But the Spurs kept punching back, and the square turned desperate, strangers grabbing strangers, an old man praying into his hands. I gripped my son's ankles tighter with every swing, because if they lost, his first Knicks memory would be the same as mine. My heart was slamming in my throat, and I swear I heard my dad in the noise, saying it one more time. "This is the year, kid." The clock ran out, and I stopped breathing. The Knicks won it all. The square detonated, grown men crying, strangers screaming with joy, like the city had held its breath for 50 years and let it out. My son screamed above me, while I pressed my dad's jersey to my face and cried for the first time since his funeral. 25 years of believing, and the first time I said it for him, it came true. "You were right, Dad. This was the year." My friend Jeremiah looked into a kid's eyes in the hallway, and the kid instantly dropped to the floor. Jeremiah yelled, "I told you all I have magic powers. Who else wants to try?" None of us believed him, until Jeremiah pointed at another random kid. "You look at me." The kid turned around and looked into Jeremiah's multicolored eyes, then immediately slumped to the floor. Everyone looked at each other in disbelief, and a crowd immediately formed around Jeremiah. Every kid he made eye contact with fell to the floor, and only got up when he snapped his fingers. Word spread through the school immediately, but then during math class, Mr. Stevenson slammed his hands on the table. "Jeremiah, stop whatever stupid game you're playing. You're not a wizard, and you're distracting the other students." Jeremiah looked up from his desk and deep into Mr. Stevenson's eyes. Mr. Stevenson's own eyes suddenly rolled back, and he collapsed on the floor, knocking his cup of coffee onto his shirt. My jaw dropped, and we all pulled our phones out recording Jeremiah, because a real superhuman was in our class. Jeremiah just chuckled, and when I asked him how he does it, he smirked. "I'm not from here." Our videos spread around our small town, and a newspaper even published an article, "Local Boy with Mysterious Powers." That's when Jeremiah announced a live show, where he would make people collapse live if they doubted him. On the day, everyone gathered in the school auditorium, whispering and excited. Cameras and press were there. But when 4 p.m. hit, Jeremiah wasn't there. We waited a full hour, but Jeremiah never showed. One by one, everyone left, and the next day, Jeremiah wasn't in school. His mom answered the door and said Jeremiah hadn't been home since the night before. I sent him messages, but he never replied. He was just gone. Then 4 years later, I ran into him at a coffee shop. "Jeremiah, is that you?" He smiled like nothing happened.
She's in, I'm in, we're in, she's in.
"So what happened with the live show and your powers?" He laughed so hard he put his coffee down. "I never had powers. I gave $1 to every person so they would drop. Even Mr. Stevenson. Once the videos were made, I knew the whole town would pay for tickets, so I took all the ticket money and bounced." I was in disbelief. "No way, man. How much did you make?" He smirked. $37 profit, dude." I looked into his eyes. He did all that for $37. It was my first day in my new foster home. I was going up the stairs when a kid shoved me and pushed me down. I had no idea who this kid was and fell down the whole flight. My ankle twisted on the last step, swelling up immediately. He walked down and stood over me. "No one will ever love you, you parentless freak." He spat on me. I was about to get up to tell my foster parents when another foster kid pulled me aside. "He's our foster parent's son, Ricky. It'll only get worse if you say something. He likes to bully all the foster kids. Try not to get killed by him." So I decided I was just going to stay out of his way, and that would be it. But the next morning, as soon as he saw me, Ricky threw a glass plate at my head and laughed. It shattered against my skull, and my head started bleeding. Blood was dripping down my face. I had to say something. His dad didn't even get up from the couch. "Ricky said you fell. If you keep running your mouth, I'll call your social worker and have you moved somewhere that'll make you wish you were back here." I felt trapped and walked away shaking. Then I heard yelling coming from Ricky's room. I stopped at the door crack and listened. His mom was screaming at him. "You think we wanted you? You were an accident and you've been a problem ever since." I stood there in shock. His own parents hated him. Then I looked up at the wall. There was a calendar. Tomorrow had a circle on it. Social worker visit. I knew exactly what I needed to do to get myself out of here. The next day, I knew the social worker was coming any minute. So I walked up to Ricky. "You called me a parentless freak, but you have parents and they don't even love you." Ricky snapped and tackled me, punching me on the ground. That's when the front door opened. The social worker walked in and saw Ricky on top of me swinging. "What is going on?" Ricky froze. She pulled him off me and helped me up. That's when she saw my swollen ankle and the gash on my head. "Who did this to you?" The foster dad panicked and pointed at Ricky. "It's him. He's the problem. This is why we don't love you. You mess everything up." The social worker looked at the parents and said, "You guys should not be foster parents," and turned to me. "Don't worry, I'll make sure you go somewhere safe." A month later, I walked into my new foster home. I saw Ricky looking broken in the living room. The kid who bullied foster kids became one. I was mid-lesson playing with my Gorilla Glue when an announcement blared. "Lockdown, lockdown. This is not a drill." A gunshot echoed down the hall, and we all immediately ducked under the tables. I felt like I was going to pass out, and the kid next to me peed his pants. Our teacher tiptoed to the door, and his face went pale. "He's coming to us. Everybody hide." He locked the door, but suddenly the handle started rattling. "Open up." The shooter kicked our door, then kicked again, and I could see the wood around the handle start to splinter. My classmates were crying and praying with their hands together because the shooter was about to come in, and we had no way out. That's when I saw the teacher running to my desk. He grabbed my Gorilla Glue and ran back to the splintering door, shouting, "Smash the windows and leave. The door won't hold. It's been an honor teaching you." We grabbed our chairs and began smashing the windows as the kicking sound continued. And when I looked back, Mr. Rogers was pouring my entire tube of Gorilla Glue onto his palms. He was muttering something under his breath and shaking violently. He pressed his glue-filled palms to either side of the door and stood in the doorway like a human shield, looking at the sky for just a split second, and my legs went numb because Mr. Rogers had been sprayed with bullets. His body was limp, but he was still blocking the doorway because of the Gorilla Glue on his palms. The shooter was pushing and trying to get into the classroom but couldn't. I climbed out the window right as Mr. Rogers' body hit the floor. The shooter ran in, but we were gone. Mr. Rogers chose to never come home to his family again, just to make sure we could come home to ours. I walked into my high school reunion, and the first person I saw was the guy who used to make me eat pencil shavings in 8th grade, now in a cheap suit holding a warm beer. "Pencil boy," he yelled across the room, loud enough to turn heads. His name was Brandon, and in 8th grade he'd hold a number 2 pencil over my lunch tray and shave the wood off it with a box cutter until the shavings buried my sandwich. "Eat it," he'd say, and the whole cafeteria would chant it until I did. Now he was waving me over like we were old friends. I went because I didn't want to make a scene, and he threw his arm around my shoulder and pulled me into a circle of 3 guys from the old crew. "Look who showed up," Brandon said, and his hand clamped down on my shoulder. "So what are you doing with yourself these days?" I told him I worked in software. "That's cute, man. That's cute." The squeeze turned into a shake, like he was rattling a kid. My face went hot, and I stepped back out from under his arm, but he closed the space again. "You still live with your mom?" I told him I had my own place in Austin. He didn't like that, so he turned to his crew and got louder. "What do you even drive?" I told him a Porsche, and the guy next to him snorted beer out his nose. "What is it, a Matchbox?" Brandon said, and the whole circle cracked up. I let them laugh. When they were done, I told them I had to grab something from my car. Brandon and all 3 of his friends followed me out into the parking lot, still cracking Matchbox jokes the whole way. I clicked the key fob and the lights on a black 911 Turbo flashed twice. Brandon stopped walking. "Dude," one of his friends said, real quiet. I opened the door, reached into the center console, and pulled out a yellow number 2 pencil. I walked back over to Brandon and held it out. "You dropped this in 8th grade, I said. I kept it. He took it without looking at me, and his friends weren't laughing anymore. I got in my car and drove off while he stood there holding it. I was in the passenger seat of my girlfriend Tara's car when I turned to her and said, "I think we should break up." She kept both hands on the wheel and stared straight ahead without saying. Watched the speedometer climb. I put my hand on the door handle. "Pull over right now." She turned and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. "If I can't have you, nobody can." There was a massive oak tree at the end of the road, and she was driving straight at it. If I didn't stop her, I was a goner. She ran a red light, and I heard horns blaring around us, and I started shaking, but I kept my voice steady. "Tara, please, you don't want to do this." She didn't say anything, and kept both hands locked on the wheel. The oak tree was getting close, so I grabbed the emergency brake between our seats and yanked it up, which made the car fishtail sideways. She screamed and reached down with one hand to shove the handbrake back down. Then she wrestled the wheel straight and her foot went back to the floor. The tree was filling the entire windshield now. I reached across her body and grabbed the key and tried to pull it from the ignition, and she bit down on my hand so hard I yelled and let go. She looked at me with tears running down her face, her foot still flat on the floor. "I love you." She kept heading straight for the oak tree, and I threw myself back and braced with both hands on the dash. We crashed, and the airbags exploded into our faces with a sound so loud it stopped being sound and became ringing in my ears. I got out on shaking legs and walked around to her side. Tara was slumped over the steering wheel, and she wasn't moving at all. I stood there looking at her through the cracked window, then stepped back and called 911. The officer looked at the skid marks, then at the tree, and asked me what happened. I sighed. She didn't take the breakup well. I walked through our school's metal detector, and it started beeping rapidly. Security grabbed me before I could react and unzipped my bag, revealing a gun. I'd no idea how it got here, but they escorted me anyway. In the office, the principal put the gun on the desk and turned to make a call, but I noticed a small piece of paper tucked inside the trigger guard. I quickly slipped it out. "This gun is fake, but the bomb in the freshman girl's bathroom isn't. Say this gun is real. Say it's yours. You have until 11:15 to convince them, or I press the button." My stomach dropped. It was 11:06. I had 9 minutes, and I knew exactly who this was. Kieran, the IT kid who'd been harassing my freshman sister. This was his way of getting rid of me. The principal got off the phone, and an officer walked in. I was about to tell them about the note until I saw a small microphone taped inside my bag. Kieran was listening. I couldn't show them the note because Kieran did IT and had access to these cameras here. I had no way to tell the truth. The principal asked, "Where did you get the gun? What were you planning?" And I gave answers that sounded guilty because my sister's life was more valuable. I had 7 minutes left to keep up the lie, but then the principal picked up the gun. "This is plastic." His face went red. "Why would you confess to bringing a real weapon when this is a toy?" I felt my blood go cold. I couldn't tell the truth, but before I could reply, the door opened. "Kieran, sorry. I heard something went wrong. Just wanted to make sure everything's going according to plan." His eyes flicked to the clock on the wall. The principal told him to go back to class, and he just left. The principal then suddenly leaned forward. "Are you covering for anything?" I felt my legs buckle. "Why?" "Because confessing to a fake gun only makes sense if you want us looking at you instead of somewhere else. Like that kid who walked in." Strange use of words, according to plan. I realized he'd figured it all out, but if I admitted that everything would blow. He opened his mouth to talk again, but then his radio crackled. A teacher asked if students could use the bathroom during lockdown. My sister needed to go. I stopped breathing. The principal replied, "No," and I exhaled hard, but he caught it. "Why did that matter to you?" I went pale. "Why did the bathroom matter to you?" he asked again. I looked at the clock. 11:12. "Because I need to use it." He stared at me. "You think I'm dumb?" I started coughing on purpose. "Please, I'm going to be sick." The principal looked at me. "Fine." The officer walked me out, and I spilled everything. The note, the mic and camera, the bomb, how we couldn't just set off the alarm because Kieran would hear and blow everything. The officer went white. We walked back in, and he whispered something to the principal. He got on his laptop and typed immediately. Within 20 seconds, students were evacuating in silence. The officer put on my cuffs to arrest me and walked me out at 11:14. By 11:15, all students were out, and Kieran never noticed, as he was monitoring the office that showed me being arrested and listening for an alarm that never came. He was found with the detonator hiding in the gym. Our professor caught Freddie hitting his vape in class and snatched it. You can't have that. Freddie waited until she turned around, dug it out of the trash, and blew the smoke right in her face. He got suspended for a week, but he didn't care, because if you told Freddie he couldn't have something, he made sure he got it. When Freddie came back from suspension, the first thing he noticed was the dean's golden whistle. What is that? The dean held it up proudly. This was a gift from the chancellor. You can't have this. Freddie looked at me. I shook my head, because the dean had no clue the animal he'd just released. The next morning, Freddie bumped into the dean in the hallway, and his hand brushed the whistle. The dean smacked his hand away. Hey, don't touch! Freddie put his hands up. I tripped. The next day, Freddie got himself sent to the dean's office just to get near the whistle. The dean had it sitting on his desk. Freddie lunged for it, but the dean grabbed it first and clipped it back around his neck. Boy, don't even try it. The chancellor is visiting today. I don't need you acting a fool. But Freddie lost all his patience, snatched the whistle clean off his neck, and took off sprinting. The dean ran after him. That's my whistle! Give it back! They flew through the hallway until Freddie slammed through the front doors into the parking lot. He saw a student with headphones step into the street as a car came flying toward him. Freddie blew the whistle. The student froze, and the car missed him by inches. The dean caught up and snatched the whistle back. Give me that! Then a voice came from behind them. I saw what just happened. The chancellor. He took the whistle from the dean and put it around Freddie's neck. You saved a life today. You deserve to keep this whistle. The next day, Freddie walked into class, and our professor saw the whistle. He smirked. You can't have that. Please be careful. My dad can be very intense. My girlfriend gripped my shoulder as we rang the doorbell. This was 1971, and I had no idea how her dad would react seeing his daughter with a black guy. His face was unreadable, and when I went to shake his hand, he ignored me and told us to come in. I felt sweat beating down my forehead as we sat, and he looked at me like if I made one wrong move, he'd use the pistol at his hip. Sir, it's nice to be quiet, he interrupted me and leaned forward. Susie, does he make you happy? Her legs shook as she took my hand. Yes, Dad. I want to marry him. I felt my heart skip a beat, but his eyes stayed locked on me. He set his drink down. If my daughter's happy, then I'm happy. He walked away. My legs shook. You really want to marry me? Susie nodded through happy tears, but then glass smashed behind us. Two men dressed in slacks and USA shirts pointed at me. So you're the darky who wants to weasel his way into our town. They held up their knives. This town is for white folk. Susie shot up. Please no. I love him. But their eyes turned darker, and they smiled at her. Well then you can die too, darky lover. They walked forward, and I stepped in front of Susie to protect her. I felt her trembling behind me, and as the men got closer, I looked around for something to grab. They got closer, and my heart pounded in fear. But then Susie's dad stepped in front of me. You're not touching them. He wasn't even shaking. The men laughed. Daryl, really? We used to drink together. Now you're defending their kind? He pointed at me, but the dad didn't move. I said you're not touching them. Their faces twisted. Then I guess you'll die too. They lunged with their knives, and I instantly wrapped Susie in my arms to protect her. But her dad drew his pistol. The shots hit their kneecaps, and they dropped to the floor screaming and bleeding. I was still hyperventilating, holding Susie as she sobbed. Her dad gripped my shoulder. I'm sorry for being so cold to you earlier, son. I judged you, and I was wrong. But you stepped in front of my daughter to save her. You're a man I'd be proud to call family. I know this is a lot to ask, but can you please forgive me? He reached out his hand. I shook it. I told my little brother to get out of our room because my date was coming over for Netflix and chill. When she came over, I grabbed the remote and quickly turned the TV on because I was nervous. We were about to get freaky deaky when her smile dropped like something was wrong. I asked if everything was okay, but her face twisted and she slapped me so hard my ears started ringing. You're disgusting, you piece of shit. Before I could say anything, she grabbed her stuff and walked out. I held my face, wondering what the hell just happened. The next morning, I walked into college and her friends shoved me into a locker while another one threw a drink in my face. You're going to pay for what you did, you nasty bum. I threw my hands up. What are you talking about? What did I do? But they just walked off. The whole college was whispering and staring at me like I'd killed someone. When I got to my locker, I froze. Racist was spray painted across it in big red letters. My hands were shaking. I'd never been a racist or acted that way, so I needed to figure out why everyone suddenly thought I was one. I tried to text her, but she'd already blocked me on everything. When I finally cornered her in the hallway, I begged, "What did I do? I seriously don't understand." She glared at me with pure hatred. You know what you did. You played that on your TV on purpose to disrespect me. I just stood there because I'd turned the TV on without even looking, and I never saw what was playing behind me. me. It didn't click until I got home. I walked into my room, and my little brother was sprawled on his bed, cracking up at the TV. I looked at the screen, and my heart sank. South Park was on, and the characters were saying the most racist stuff I'd ever heard. My little brother had been watching it right before she came over, and when I grabbed the remote and turned the TV on, it picked up right where he left off. I was so busy looking at her that I never saw the racist jokes playing on the screen behind me the whole time. She thought I was racist, but that was unfortunate, because I love chocolate baddies more than anything on this planet. I was meeting my girlfriend's parents for the first time when I sat down on their couch and felt my leather pants rip down my butt. I froze. I'd worn leather pants look fancy, but if I stood up, my whole would be exposed in front of her family. Her dad stared at me, arms crossed, like he already hated me. My girlfriend asked, "What was that noise?" It sounded like a rip. I panicked. That was me. I farted because I'm nervous. Her dad made a stank face at me. Then her mom called out, "Barbecue's ready in 10 minutes. My heart sank. I had 10 minutes to fix this before I had to walk out to the backyard in front of everyone. I knew I needed to get up without anyone seeing my butt, but then my girlfriend said, "Can you go help my mom carry the food out?" Her mom was standing there with a heavy tray, waiting for me. If I said no, I'd look rude, so I panicked. "Let me use the bathroom first." I backed out of the room with my hands behind me, pressed against the wall. As I shuffled down the hall, I caught her dad watching me the whole way. His eyes narrowed like he knew I was up to something. I gulped and shut myself in the bathroom. I had no idea what to do. Then I spotted a stapler on the shelf. I started stapling the leather back together as fast as I could, wincing at every click. Then a knock. My girlfriend. "What's taking you so long? My mom is waiting." I heard her walk off and stapled faster, my heart beating out of my chest. I was almost done when the door swung open. I realized I never locked it and turned around. It was her dad. I froze, waiting for him to call me out in front of everyone. Instead, he shut the door behind him and smirked. "You think a stapler is going to fix that?" And he tossed me a pair of his own jeans. "I knew the second you sat down. That rip sounded nothing like a fart." I stared at him in shock. I ripped mine at my own wedding. I know how it feels. I changed into his jeans, and when we walked out to the backyard, my girlfriend asked, "What took you so long?" Her dad answered before I could. He looked down at my pants and said, I was giving him some fashion advice. I smiled because ripping my pants got me accepted into the family. My brother looked me dead in the eye and said, "The only superpower you have is being annoying." I slammed the front door and ran down the street. I was 6 blocks from home, still crying, when a white van pulled up beside me. Before I could react, the door slid open and a man in a ski mask grabbed my arm. "Don't make a sound." He yanked me into the back seat, locked the doors, and pulled onto the highway. I pressed myself against the window and watched my neighborhood disappear. I begged him to let me go, but he just laughed. That's when I heard my brother's voice in my head. "The only superpower you have is being annoying." I wiped my face on my sleeve and scooted forward. "Did you know that a group of flamingos is called a flamboyance?" He told me to shut up. "I just thought you would want to know." He said nothing, so I sang the SpongeBob theme twice, replacing every other word with the word Bologna. His knuckles went white on the wheel. "Do you have any snacks?" He said no. "That's kind of rude." I demonstrated my loose tooth with my tongue for a full minute. "Are we going to your lair? Is that where you keep the snacks?" I started crying for real because I hadn't fed my fish Gerald before I left. He asked who Gerald was. "He's my fish." He said Gerald would be fine. "You don't know that." I cried louder. He cranked the radio to drown me out. Then I sneezed and accidentally spit on the back of his neck. He pulled over so fast the tires scraped the curb. He got out, opened my door, and pointed down the road. "Your neighborhood is that way. Go." I climbed out. "Wait," I said. He froze. "Do you want to know what a group of owls is called?" He got in without closing the door and floored it. I watched him run a red light getting out of the neighborhood. When I got home, my brother was still on the couch. I walked straight past him. "You were right," I said. "It is a superpower." Gerald was fine. My math teacher's exam policy said 1 calculator, no restrictions, so I showed up to the final with a desktop computer on a rolling cart. I had to tilt the monitor sideways just to fit it through the door. My teacher set down his coffee and walked over before I even even sat down. What is that? My calculator. He looked at the monitor, then at the 3 programs already running on screen. That is not a calculator. I turned the monitor toward him. It runs calculator software, and your policy says 1 calculator, no restrictions. He walked back to his desk and picked up the policy sheet. He held it up next to the computer like comparing the two would prove something. 5 words on one side, a full desktop on the other. The intent of the policy, clearly. The policy says no restrictions. He flipped the sheet over, hoping for more on the back. There wasn't. It's the size of a microwave. Nothing in the policy about size. Just think of it as one big calculator. He turned to the class like someone might back him up. Nobody said a word. A kid in the front row was biting his fist, trying not to laugh. He looked down at those 5 words one more time and sat down. Just take the exam. I finished before everyone else because while they punched numbers one at a time, I had 3 programs running side by side. I powered down the desktop, loaded it back on the cart, and wheeled it out. My teacher watched me go without blinking. The next exam's calculator policy was a full page long. First line said, must be handheld. I showed up with a tablet running 6. I was 5 minutes from home when I accidentally dropped my mom's phone on the sidewalk and completely shattered the screen. I stared in horror. She'd let me borrow it for school that morning, but only after making me swear on my life. She said, do not break this. This case is foolproof, so there's no excuse. Now there was a giant spiderweb crack right in the middle. I panicked and pressed my thumb on the glass to push it together, but the crack just spread wider. I had to fix this before I got my ass. Whooped. I speed-walked home, praying my mom wasn't there yet. I slipped through the door. Mom? Nothing. She wasn't home. I ran to the bathroom and remembered a video that said toothpaste fixes cracked screens, so I squeezed a huge glob on and rubbed it into the cracks. But when I wiped it off, it looked 10 times worse. White gunk smeared into every crack and even got into the charging port. I felt lightheaded and decided the only way was to get it fixed professionally. So I sprinted to the phone repair store down the street. The guy behind the counter picked it up and barely looked at it. $200. My heart sank. I'm 10. I emptied my pockets, but I had $6 and gum. Isn't there anything cheaper? He wouldn't budge. I felt defeated, holding the cracked phone, with no idea what to do. And the second I stepped outside the store, I heard a car horn. I looked up. It was my mom, parked right in front of the store, staring straight at me. I got in the car, and she asked why I was at the phone repair store. I immediately burst into tears. I dropped your phone and the screen shattered. I tried everything. Please don't kill me. My mom took the phone from my shaking hands. She said nothing, which felt worse. But then she peeled the screen protector off. Underneath, the screen was perfectly fine. The whole time, I'd only cracked the protector. I drop it all the time. Why do you think I have a foolproof phone case? For a second, I felt pure relief. But then she tried to turn it on to charge it, and nothing happened. A glob of toothpaste oozed out of the charging port. Her face went flat. She handed the dead phone back to me. You're not getting a phone until college. I told my son's school exactly who I was on career day, and they stared in horror. Please don't go, Dad. You're a garbage man. You'll embarrass me. My son Liam covered his face. I'll be bullied forever. I ruffled his hair and replied, that won't happen, son. Anyone who will say anything is just insecure. Trust me. I walked into Liam's classroom the next morning in a suit I got from Walmart. Liam sat in the back trying not to look at me, and it made me sad to see how embarrassed he was of me. The other parents introduced themselves as accountants, therapists, and someone even said heart surgeon, but when I proudly said, I'm a garbage man, only one kid laughed. That kid was Liam. He pointed his finger at me and said, whose dad is that, collecting bins for a living? His classmates stared at him, then back at me, and my face went beet red. My own son was humiliating me and pretending he didn't know me. I looked at Liam and widened my eyes, signaling for him to stop, but he leaned back in his chair and shouted, why are you staring at me like that garbage boy? I'm not a trash can. He looked around the room with a smug grin, trying to get a reaction, and shouted, whose dad is this LMAO? I bet it's yours, Ryan. I'll leave some of my trash on the road for him next Tuesday. Nobody replied to him, so he crumpled a piece of paper and threw it at me. Pick it up, Walmart suit. My dad said he wants this place clear. Liam started laughing to himself, clutching his stomach and loudly repeating, he empties dumpsters for a living, guys. Isn't that hilarious? Tears of laughter were rolling down his cheeks, while I stood there more embarrassed than I'd ever been. But when I looked around, nobody was laughing. They were staring at Liam in disgust, and when Liam went to throw another piece of paper at me, the boy next to him gripped Liam's arm. His face was serious. Liam, isn't that your your dad?" Liam stopped laughing immediately, and his mouth twisted in horror. "That's not my dad." "Yes, it is," the boy interrupted him. "We know it is," another girl added. His crush stood up. "Why would you do that to your own dad, Liam? You disgust me." His face crumpled and he started tearing up, and I watched speechless as 20 kids all defended me. Liam looked at me for help, but I just shrugged and let them tear into him. They made him say, "I'm sorry, Dad," aloud, and afterwards listened intently when I talked about being a garbage man. Liam sat in silence with tear stains on his shirt, too embarrassed to speak another word. I threw a note to my crush in 6th period, and Mr. Pelletier snatched it out of the air mid-flight. The whole class went, "Ooh." Mr. Pelletier held the paper ball between 2 fingers like a dead bug and walked it back to his desk. My brother leaned forward from the row behind me, grinning. "What's it say, Romeo?" I turned around. "Shut up and focus on your work before you flunk again." He put his hands up and went back to doodling. Mr. Pelletier sat down and started unfolding it, clearing his throat as he got ready to read. "I think you're the prettiest girl in 8th grade." The class exploded. My crush turned the color of a tomato and sank into her chair. Mr. Pelletier flipped the page around and showed everyone a stick figure wedding I'd drawn with hearts orbiting our heads. People were on the floor. "Don't tell my brother because he likes you too." My brother shot up out of his chair so hard it tipped backward. "What?" Mr. Pelletier smirked at him and kept reading. He sat back down, ripped a sheet from his notebook, scribbled something fast, balled it up, and chucked it across the room. It bounced off Mr. Pelletier's forehead. The whole class froze. Mr. Pelletier picked it up off his desk, unfolded it, and his face changed. He folded it back, set it down, and dismissed class 15 minutes early. The class poured out into the hallway. I grabbed the note off Mr. Pelletier's desk on the way past and caught up to my crush at the lockers. I held it out. "You didn't get to read the last line." She took it just as my brother walked up. "I told him he needs to shower. He's been wearing the same coffee-stained shirt for 5 days." I turned and looked back through the classroom door. There was a coffee stain going down the front of Mr. Pelletier's shirt. My brother slapped my shoulder. "I'll leave you 2 lovebirds alone." She unfolded the note and read it. "Will you be my girlfriend?" Her face stayed soft. She folded it back up, tucked it in her pocket, and kissed me on the cheek. "Yes, yes I will." She reached for my hand, and we walked toward our next class together. I loaded Call of Duty on the PS5, while the rest of the boys grabbed controllers and dropped in front of the flat screen. Jeff slid 4 pizza boxes onto the coffee table. Pete raised his controller. "Sunrise or bust, boys." Tony tossed his phone face down on the table. I popped a Tums and grabbed a slice of pizza. Hell yeah, just like the old days. We hadn't pulled an all-nighter in 20 years, and tonight we were going till sunrise. But unlike the old days, 10 minutes after that first slice, my chest lit up like I'd swallowed a road flare. I sprinted upstairs for more Tums while Pete yelled, "You good, bro?" without pausing the game. When I came back down, Jeff was standing up for another slice, and his back gave out halfway. He crashed, making a noise I'd only heard my dad make. "Just give me a minute, just give me 1 minute." He didn't get up. 1 down. Tony's phone buzzed and he picked it up. It was his boss. "If I get the deck done by morning, there's a bonus." He opened his laptop next to his controller. "Boys, I'll multitask. This is fine." 20 minutes later, his face was flat on the keyboard, snoring into a long stream of Q, 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 Q. 2 down. That's when we heard footsteps coming down the stairs. My wife appeared in her robe. "It is 9:15. You are screaming. The kids have school tomorrow." Same voice my mom used in 10th grade. We all whispered sorry like we were 14. She went back upstairs. Pete was the only one still playing. Then his head dipped sideways. He was snoring with the controller in his hand while his character ran into a wall on a loop. 3 down. I closed my eyes too. I jolted awake to my wife standing over us holding a blanket. She didn't say a word. She tucked Pete in like the kids upstairs, picked up the half-eaten pizza, turned off the TV, and walked back to bed. The clock said 10:49. In high school, we used to do this till sunrise. Now at 45, we didn't even make it to 11. My mom yanked my Game Boy mid-Pokemon battle and said I wasn't getting it back until report cards. She buried it in her closet under a stack of sweaters, but I peeked through the hallway and saw exactly where it went. 3 nights later, I waited for her snoring to shake the walls, crept across the hall, and slid it out. Back under my blanket, I popped in fresh AAs. My Charizard was level 47, and I was 1 route away from the Elite Four, the final 4 bosses standing between me and beating the whole game. I grinded on Victory Road for an hour, sweating under covers I couldn't kick off. The hallway floor creaked. I shoved the Game Boy under my blanket and held my breath until the silence settled back in. By 1 a.m., I walked into the Indigo Plateau, where the Elite Four were waiting. Lorelei, the first, fell in 3 turns. Bruno took my Lapras down with him before I dropped him next, 2 of the 4 already gone. Then footsteps came down the hallway, straight toward my door. I jammed the Game Boy under my pillow, rolled over, and squeezed my eyes shut. The door cracked open. Mom stood there for what felt like 10 years before easing it shut. I waited for her snoring to kick back in, then slid the Game Boy out and kept going. Agatha brought me down to my last Pokemon, hands shaking, until I landed a critical hit with 4 HP left. Lance was the last of the 4. He took out everyone but my Charizard before I finished him, and the screen started dimming. The battery icon flashed in the corner, but I told myself it would last. The champion appeared, my rival, the kid I'd been racing since Pallet Town. He was the last last thing standing between me and the end of the game. We were both down to one Pokemon, and I tapped Fire Blast. Critical hit. The screen went white, and the game said, "You did it." I bit my pillow so I wouldn't scream. The Hall of Fame music played quiet and tinny. Each Pokemon scrolled across the screen. The save screen came up, and I tapped, "Yes, saving. Don't turn off the power." I couldn't hold it in. I jumped to my feet on the mattress, fists in the air, bouncing in silent celebration. The screen flickered. I froze mid-bounce. It went black. I shook the Game Boy, pressed every button, popped the battery cover. Both AAs were drained. The last save was from before I walked in. 6 hours of grinding. The Elite Four, the champion. As far as the game knew, none of it happened. A mother called 911 on me for watching kids at the playground, not knowing I controlled her custody fate. The woman cornered me while the other mothers watched, insisting men only showed up here on weekdays when they had custody battles to win, completely unaware that I was the psychologist who evaluated parents for those exact battles. The woman pulled her daughter away when my niece tried to play with her. When I explained I was watching my niece, her mouth tightened into a thin line. My ex-husband used to pretend to care about our daughter too. Suddenly, I remembered her as a woman who had an evaluation appointment with me later that week. She tilted her head. "Are you going through a divorce too? Since you're playing uncle instead of being at work like a normal man." "Some of us take time off for family," I said quietly, but she scoffed. "Do you have photos of children on your phone, Mr. Uncle?" She ripped my phone out of my pocket. Then she marched over to a group of playing children, her voice carrying as she pointed at me. "If he tries to talk to you, you run to your mommies. Understand?" she instructed. And my stomach twisted as my niece's new friends backed away from her. My niece ran to me sobbing, and the woman grabbed her arm and yanked her backward off her feet, knocking the wind out of her. "It's okay, sweetie. Mr. Uncle won't be allowed near you anymore," she said with a fake, gentle smile. My niece reached desperately for me while my legs turned to water, her small fingers clawing at the air between us as the woman dragged her further away. "Let her go," I said. "You're hurting her." Her face lit up with triumph as she released my niece and rushed at me, shoving me back against the fence, the chain link digging into my spine as she pinned me there with her forearm across my throat. "He tried to lure a little girl into the bathroom, officer," she said into my phone while I struggled to breathe. "He's getting aggressive now. Please hurry." The police arrived, and the officer recognized me immediately. "Dr. James?" he asked, and the woman's grip loosened as he explained to the crowd that I wrote recommendations for every custody battle in the district. The color drained from her face. She stumbled backward, grabbing my arm, repeating her case number while trying to help bandage my niece's knee, insisting her vigilance today showed she deserved full custody. "I'll see you Thursday," I said, "for your evaluation." I walked into my grandpa's nursing home and saw his cane across the room while 2 attendants stood over him laughing. Grandpa was on his knees reaching for it when the tall attendant slid it farther with his foot. "Try again, Gramps." I ran over and helped Grandpa to his feet. The tall attendant smirked as he walked off. "Lucky your grandson came to save you, Gramps." I handed Grandpa his cane. The next morning, I signed him up at my jiu-jitsu gym and bought him a GI. Next time they came for him, he'd be ready. First class, he tried the basic hip throw and went down so hard he bounced. He sat up laughing, and so did I. A month in, he swept my leg in sparring, and we both lost it. We started staying an extra hour after class to drill, just the 2 of us. One night, my coach pulled me aside. "Your grandpa's been coming in at 6 in the morning, just him and a dummy, drilling wrist locks." On the drive home, Grandpa stared out the window. "If a man grabs me, like a real grab, what do I do?" I showed him in the parking lot, and he repeated it 10 times before getting out. Saturday, I drove back to pick him up for class. I walked in, and the tall attendant was right up in Grandpa's face. "Your grandson isn't coming to save you this time, Gramps." He reached for Grandpa's collar. I sprinted to take the guy down before he could touch Grandpa, but Grandpa beat me to it. He caught the wrist, twisted, and the attendant folded forward, yelping. Grandpa grabbed his shirt with the other hand and slammed him flat on the floor. "Grandpa, when did you get so good?" Grandpa straightened up and dusted off his hands. "I didn't want you to have to save me again, kid." He picked up his cane, hooked his arm through mine, and we walked out to class. I collected all my 4th graders' tests, but when I looked at them, I nearly fell from my chair. A kid named Sam had spelled his own name wrong. He'd written 10 as his answer for 4 + 5 and wrote "Destor" for "Where does honey come from?" I glanced up and saw Saw hunched over his phone scrolling, the neon and blue screen lights keeping him in what looked like a trance, and immediately knew what the problem was. I asked Sam to stay back, but when the bell rang, he stayed slumped over his phone, watching skibidi videos. I asked him to put it away, and he angrily set it down. "You happy now?" I started talking, but he only lasted a second before his hand started flicking 6-7 in the air. I turned my laptop around and showed him his test scores, nothing more than 10% the entire year. "Do you understand what this means?" Sam leaned forward, squinted at the screen, then sounded out "year" as "ye are," and gave up halfway. "I don't know what you're showing me." I gripped my head in shock and quickly wrote "cat" on the whiteboard. "Can you read this, Sam?" Sam looked at it. "Ku." He paused. "Ku." My chest tightened. This was a word my 3-year-old could read. Sam gave up on the letter T and immediately picked his phone back up. He shoved the screen at my face, showing me some AI shark with sneakers. "Tralalero tralala," he shrieked repeatedly. I picked up my phone and called his parents because I was genuinely worried. His mom and dad walked through my door 20 minutes later, both staring down at their phones. They sat in the chairs across from me without looking up from their screens. My stomach sank, but I told them Sam was struggling and that this was serious. I held up his test and pointed at his own name spelled wrong at the top. He can't spell his own name, but the mom didn't even glance at the paper. She turned to her husband and showed him a funny video on her phone, and they both laughed before going back to scrolling. They hadn't heard a word I said. Sam sat in the chair beside them on his own phone, 3 heads bent over 3 screens. I realized Sam was never the problem. He was just the result of parents that failed him. I climbed into my bed with a grin, feeling my jeans press against the duvet covers. My dad came over and leaned against my door. "I'm sorry I said no to you going to the party, son, but I know the kids there. It's too dangerous." He walked back to his room, and I instantly got up from the covers. I laced up my Jordans and climbed out my window the second I heard snoring. I walked into that party and was immediately surrounded by college kids twice my size. I grabbed a red cup and filled it with juice to fit in, then pulled out my phone to take pictures so I could show everyone how cool I was. Then I heard yelling in the backyard. I walked over with loose legs to seem nonchalant and saw 2 people punching each other. I put my hands up and yelled, "Fight," like everyone else, but then a gunshot rang out, then another one. The music stopped and everyone started running. I got knocked to the floor and dozens of feet instantly stampeded me, stepping on my head, my fingers and my legs. My red cup spilled and ruined my Jordans as more gunshots echoed around me. I laid on the floor, afraid I was going to die, when I spotted a bathroom. I crawled into it and shut the door quietly as I could, but another gunshot sounded out just outside. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I snuck out to the party. There's someone here shooting and I'm hiding in a bathroom. Please help." I instantly heard him running and grabbing his car keys. "I'm coming right now." He hung up and I pressed my knees to my chest, listening to the sound of reloading outside. Then headlights swung through the window. Dad was running barefoot into the house in his pajamas. I heard him scream my name, but then a gunshot cracked outside. Something dropped and my whole body locked up. I went to scream "Dad," but I caught myself, and suddenly the handle started rattling.
She's in, I'm in, we're in, she's in. Let's go! She's in, I'm in, we're in, she's in. Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
Rolled up into a ball, arms over my head, thinking this was it. But then Dad opened the door. Blood dripped from the bullet wound in his arm, but he just pulled me to my feet. We walked past the attacker who was now laying on the floor, and when we got in the car, he peeled out, driving one-handed in total silence. The bullet stayed lodged in his injured arm. I looked at him not saying a word and just broke. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." But he just kept his eyes on the road. "It's okay, kid. You still called me, even when you knew I'd told you no. That means more to me than you could ever know." He pulled into my favorite diner. "I'll always come get you, no matter what." The kid on the mound laughed at me in front of the whole team and said, "You throw like a girl." I picked up my glove and walked off the field. The other boys were still laughing when I got to my mom's car. My older sister was in the passenger seat with her college jacket on. She took one look at my face and the glove in my hand and said, "You're not quitting. Get in. We're going to the backyard." My sister pitched for her college team and had a fastball scouts drove 3 hours to watch. She handed me a ball in the backyard and told me to throw it at the fence. I threw it, and it bounced twice before it got there. She didn't laugh. She walked over and put her hand on my shoulder. "Your elbow's dropping," she said. "Watch me." She wound up, and the ball cracked against the fence so loud our neighbor opened his window and yelled at us to keep it down. She turned to me and grinned. "That's what we're going for." She fixed my grip and showed me how her fingers came off the seams last. The next one still took 2 bounces to get there, and I almost threw the glove down, but she just handed me another ball. The one after that hit the fence on 1 bounce. The next night, I hit it on the fly. The night after that, I broke a slat. By the end of the 2nd week, our neighbor stopped opening his window because he knew it was just us. The next game, the kid who laughed at me stepped up to the plate. I was pitching. He smirked at me like he always did. I held the ball the way my sister showed me, my fingers high on the seams. I threw the first pitch and the catcher's mitt cracked so loud the kid flinched. He swung late and the catcher already had it. The second pitch he watched go by for strike 2. On the third pitch he swung swung so hard, the bat slipped out of his hands and skidded into the dugout. "Strike 3, the umpire said, and the kid just stared at me. I didn't pump my fist or yell. I looked up into the bleachers and found my sister sitting there in her college jacket, and I nodded at her. She nodded back. I throw like my sister, and my sister throws harder than anyone on that field. I bet a kid in class my whole fidget spinner collection that I could keep mine spinning the entire class period. The deal was, if my spinner stopped before the bell rang, I lost everything, but if it didn't, his entire collection was mine. I grabbed my lucky gold spinner out of my bag and sighed because Mrs. Halverson had banned spinners last week, but I was never one to say no to a challenge. I started the timer, and with a hard flick of my finger, my spinner came to life. Mrs. Halverson started patrolling our row first thing. I knocked my pencil onto the floor on purpose and bent down to grab it, cupping my hand over my spinner as she walked right past my desk. She didn't even glance at it, and my spinner kept spinning. A few seconds later, Brennan reached across the aisle pretending to ask for a pencil, but lunged for my spinner out of nowhere. I caught his wrist right before his finger touched it, and he grinned at me. "Bro, it's already over." But my spinner was still going strong as ever. Then the AC kicked on, and a freezing draft fell straight from the vent above my desk. My spinner wobbled hard like it was about to drop, so I hunched over it to block the air. It didn't fall, but it was wobbling bad now. A few minutes later, Mrs. Halverson stopped at the front of the room and pointed right at me. What was the anaconda plan? My spinner was dipping in the corner of my eye, but I had to keep my head up and act normal. It was a Union plan to blockade the South. She nodded and moved on, but my spinner was barely turning. 30 seconds left, and my spinner was about to die. Brennan unzipped his bag and held it open with a smirk. "Bro, it's over. Pay up." I knew I had to do something fast, so I threw my hand up. "Mrs. Halverson, can I grab a tissue?" She nodded, and on my way back, I walked past the open window 2 desks over and fanned my shirt as hard as I could. A gust of wind hit my desk, and my spinner came back to life. The bell rang. My spinner was still spinning on my desk like nothing had happened. I'd done it. I'd actually won, and I pumped my fist in the air. Yes! The whole class turned, and so did Mrs. Halverson. She walked over and saw everything at once. My spinner on my desk, Brennan's open bag of 30 on his desk, and my open bag of spinners on the floor next to my seat. "All right, you two, up here. Bring me both bags." Brennan handed his over without a word. I picked up mine off the floor and dropped it on top of his. She turned both bags upside down over her drawer, and 60 spinners hit the wood. Then she reached over and plucked the still spinning gold one right off my desk. I won the bet, but had nothing to show for it as I watched my lucky spinner and the rest disappear as she slid the drawer shut. The judges laughed when my autistic son pulled out a Rubik's Cube at the talent show. "What can you even do with that little thing?" Caleb climbed onto the stool and set the cube down without saying a word. I watched his hands start moving before the judges even stopped laughing. His hands tore across the cube in a blur of twists and clicks. 7 seconds later, he set it down, solved. He'd been doing this since he was 4. The judges stopped smirking. He turned the stool to face the wall and solved the next cube without looking. His fingers found the edges by feel, working corners.
As an entrepreneur myself, I am so happy to have started my business with Shopify. I was able to create a stunning store in minutes with Shopify of my curated artworks. I started out with a Shopify free trial, then set up my store and explored all its features so I knew it worked before paying for anything. Look, I am not an artist, but I think I've got pretty good taste. With Shopify's library of themes, I easily dialed my store to meet my style. No matter how small or big your business is, start your free trial on Shopify today.
He couldn't see. The gym started murmuring. A teacher walked up and scrambled a fresh cube. Caleb tied on a blindfold, felt the cube like he was reading Braille, and started twisting. 18 seconds later, he held up a solved cube. The applause was real now. He pulled out a board with 25 scrambled cubes in a 5x5 grid. The gym went silent, except for the clicking. He picked them up one by one, solving each in seconds and placing them to match a pattern only he could see. When he placed the last cube, the school logo was staring back at the audience in perfect pixels. Caleb stood up and bowed, and the gym went crazy, screaming and applauding. The vice principal walked past the judges' scores and handed Caleb the trophy herself. He took it, set it on the floor next to him, and reached for another cube. The judge who'd laughed first walked over with her hand out, but Caleb didn't look up. She finally lowered her hand and walked back to her seat. The gym was still cheering, but Caleb hadn't noticed. He was already 3 seconds into the next cube. I was already late for work, so I threw on my Heelys and rolled out the door. I dropped into a full Naruto stride, arms pinned back, and flashed past the bus stop crowd before they looked up, because This was my third late this month, and my boss swore the next one was my last. The Heelys weren't a joke to me. They were the only thing fast enough to save the job I couldn't afford to lose, so I kept kicking, eyes on my watch, doing the math on whether I'd make it. That's why I never saw the foot. One second I was flying, the next my chin skipped off the concrete and I slid 3 feet on my face. I rolled over and a kid was standing over me, one hand on his little brother's stroller, leaning down, losing it. "No way, you're a grown man in roller skates. What kind of sissy are you?" He laughed so hard he let go of the stroller, which rolled off the curb into the street, and I heard a truck coming. The kid was screaming for his brother. "Leo!" I was still half on the ground, but my spidey senses kicked in, so I shoved off and clicked onto the wheels. With one hard push, they caught the asphalt, throwing me across the road faster than my legs ever could. I got both hands on the stroller and shoved it to the far sidewalk as the truck blew past close enough to slap me with wind. The kid waddled to the stroller and held it tighter than ever. The baby was screaming his head off, alive and furious. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stay longer than I needed because all I could think about was the clock and how now I was the kind of late my boss warned me about. So I did the only thing my body knew how to do. I tapped my heels and rolled. I rolled into the office to find my boss waiting at my desk. "You've got to be kidding me. Late again, and you roll in on those toys like a kid at recess." He held out a sheet of paper. "I told you what the next time would cost you. Clean out your desk." I was reaching for it when the door flew open. A woman rushed in with a stroller, a kid behind her, and went straight to my boss. "Daniel, Leo's okay, but his stroller rolled into the road and a man caught it before a truck hit him." That's when the kid saw me and grabbed her sleeve. "Mom, that's him. That's the guy who caught Leo on his Heelys." My boss looked at the stroller, then the toys he'd just been firing me for, then the paper in his hand. He couldn't get a word out, so I left it with him, nodded, and said, "If you'll excuse me, sir, I'm gonna roll out." I tapped my heels and rolled to my desk, dropped into my chair, leaned back, and kicked my Heelys up on it, because they were never a joke. They were the real deal. My new dog ran into Dad's leg while chasing his ball, and my face instantly dropped in horror. Dad's eyes teared up and he sneezed for the 10th time, then pointed at Lucky. "That dog's going back to the pound." He picked Lucky up while he whimpered, but I instantly snatched him from Dad's arms and locked myself into the bathroom. Dad pounded the door. "Come out right now or you're grounded." But I yelled back, "I'm only coming out when you let Lucky stay." He replied, "Not happening. I'm allergic." So I put a surgical mask around Lucky's face and sent him a picture. "Now he can't lick you, Dad." I felt like a genius, but Dad yelled, "That's not how it works," and slid a paper under the door. I picked it up and my heart dropped. My birthday parties and Christmas presents for the next 8 years, or Lucky staying. I could only have one. I teared up, but when Lucky brushed up against my leg like I was his only friend, I circled Lucky and slid the paper back. Silence. Then suddenly, bang! Dad threw his shoulder into the door. "I'm coming in!" My legs shook, and I knew we were screwed as the only way out was a tiny window I was too small to fit through. Dad continued hitting the door, and I cried out, "Please, Dad, Lucky's my only friend." He said, "Then this will be a lesson to make friends like normal kids." The door splintered as he hit it again, and my heart broke when Lucky started cowering behind me. The door slammed again, and eventually broke open. Dad stormed in, panting and red in the face. "Where's that damn dog?" Spit flew from his mouth and he looked around at the empty bathroom. I pointed at the open window. "Lucky got so scared of you he ran away." My voice shook. Dad smirked and crossed his arms. "Well, at least he's gone." He walked out. I wiped my tears, then peered behind the broken door to make sure he was gone. That's when I lifted the toilet tank and pulled Lucky out. He was soaking wet and wagging his tail in my arms. We ran into my room where I locked the door and took out his favorite toy. Our teacher stormed into class with a mysterious red stain on his shirt sleeve. My best friend whispered, "Mr. Grant's sleeve looks like it was soaked in something red, and look at the huge bags under his eyes." He snapped at us to stop talking. The whole class held its breath. This wasn't like our teacher at all. Did something horrible happen? Mr. Grant barked out questions and targeted students avoiding his eyes. My friend slipped me a note. "Something is definitely wrong. He was the nicest person in the world yesterday, and now he's acting like he wants to strangle someone." When I looked at Mr. Grant's sleeve again, I thought that it looked a lot like blood. He caught me looking and glared before putting his jacket on, hiding the stain. He then continued his lesson on the value of lime in gardens, saying, "It's a useful aid in breaking down dead matter." I didn't hear the rest as I looked down at the mud on his usually clean shoes. Between a stain that looked like blood and evidence pointing to Mr. Grant being up late in the mud, it was starting to look like he had buried a body. Mr. Grant's phone rang, and he answered it immediately. "You found her, didn't you?" "I knew it. I knew it would come to this." My friend slipped me another note. "Do you think this is about his wife? I heard rumors they were having problems." I wrote back, "Do you think Mr. Grant is capable of offing her?" He looked up, as if suddenly remembering we were there. "Class is dismissed. Get out." Everyone scrambled to grab their things and run out as fast as possible, but But as I rushed past Mr. Grant's desk, he pointed at me. I expect you to still make our meeting. My friend cornered me as soon as we were in the hallway, demanding to know what he meant. I explained that I was supposed to meet with him about my final project, but now I had no idea what would happen. My hands were shaking when I knocked on the door. Mr. Grant called for me to come in, and I took a seat across from him. I tried to ignore the red stain on his sleeve as he leaned towards me, saying, "I've been disappointed with your work lately, but I don't think we need to worry about that anymore." He then slowly reached down and opened one of his desk drawers. I couldn't take it anymore and bolted out of my seat. "Please, I won't tell anyone. Just don't hurt me." Mr. Grant narrowed his eyes as he pulled out a Chromebook. "I checked this out from the school library for you to help with your project. Why would I hurt you?" Sweat dripped down my forehead. Because you offed your wife?" Mr. Grant stared at me for a solid minute before busting out laughing. Finally, he explained, "I was out late drinking red wine and had to walk home in the mud. That call during class was from a private investigator I hired to collect proof that my wife's been cheating on me. He called a divorce lawyer right after. The second my mom's minivan turned the corner, I looked down at my dog and said, 'Wally, we're about to break every single rule Mom has.' Wally exploded off his hind legs, tail whipping so hard his whole back end swung sideways into the wall. I was home alone for the first time. I had 4 hours before Mom got back, so I bolted into the kitchen, planted my foot on a drawer handle, and hauled myself straight up onto the counter. Mom said she'd ground me for a month if she ever caught me up here. I tore through the cabinets and grabbed a bag of chips in one hand and a loaf of bread in the other. Mom said no snacks before dinner. I called down to Wally, who was spinning circles below me. Mom said get off the counter. Mom said don't you dare feed the dog people food. I grinned down at him with the bag of chips still in my hand. But guess what, buddy? Mom's not here. First, I laid 2 slices of white bread on the plate. Then I dug into the fridge and slathered 1 slice with peanut butter, then strawberry jelly on top, then a big squirt of yellow mustard. Wally was watching me with his huge brown eyes locked on the plate. "Want a taste?" I tossed him a marshmallow and he caught it in the air. That's when my phone buzzed on the counter. "Mom." My heart stopped. I wiped peanut butter off my hand and answered. "Hi, Mom." "Hey, baby, what are you up to?" I looked at the demolished kitchen, where Wally was licking marshmallow off his nose. "Just reading a book. That's my boy. I love you." She hung up. I stared at the phone while Wally tilted his head at me. Then I got back to work. I dumped a handful of marshmallows onto the bread and smashed them flat with my palm. I added 3 pickle slices for crunch. I crushed a fistful of cheese puffs and sprinkled the orange dust over the top. Then I drew a big zigzag of chocolate syrup across everything. I pressed the second slice down so hard peanut butter oozed out the sides. "Wally, behold." I took my first bite leaning over the plate so the syrup wouldn't drip on my shirt. It was disgusting, but it was my first taste of freedom, and that made it the best thing I had ever eaten. I tore off a corner and held it down to Wally. He caught it and chewed with that goofy open-mouthed chew dogs do, then sat right back down for more. I looked around at the crumbs on the counter, the orange dust on my hands, and the peanut butter stuck to my dog's nose. Nobody was coming to stop me. I still had 3 hours and 53 minutes left. I'd be dead if Mom saw the kitchen like this, but that was a problem for future me. I grabbed 2 more slices of bread. "Wally, let's do it again." I finally worked up the courage to pass my crush the note, but my teacher snatched it from my hands. "You know the punishment for passing notes." He opened it and started reading aloud. "I really like you, Tracy. Will you go to the dance with me?" I felt my face go red as the whole class laughed, but the teacher had this strange, smug grin. "Aw, you like Tracy, do you? Well then, you should go talk to her." He moved my chair next to hers, and when I sat down, Tracy angled her whole body away from me. But he just pushed her chair closer, forcing her shoulder to touch mine. She was clearly uncomfortable by what he was doing, but he didn't care, and even physically forced us to hold hands, despite Tracy saying no. She looked disgusted by me, and the whole class mocked us, but he only laughed harder. Every day after that, for some reason, he embarrassed us more. He constantly asked if we kissed yet, and passed our love notes, which he'd written himself around the whole school. Tracy begged him to stop because she was losing friends and getting bullied, but he'd just smile and continue. One day, I walked to his class to talk to him, but he wasn't there. I looked down and saw divorce papers open in his drawer. I wasn't going to look, but the woman's name caught my eye. I glanced down and realized he had been married to Tracy's mother. She was leaving him. My jaw dropped, and I realized that's why he enjoyed making Tracy suffer. He was taking his anger out on this innocent girl, and I was just his tool to do it. And then I saw something else in the drawer, a letter in his handwriting. I got the perfect idea. Everyone came in after lunch, and I stood up and walked to the front. "Proposing to Tracy?" the teacher joked. The whole class laughed, and Tracy looked embarrassed, but I just laughed back and took out his letter. I cleared my throat. "I'm so sorry for cheating. I'll crawl on my hands and knees for you to forgive me." The teacher's face instantly twisted as he realized what I was doing, and he lunged for me. But I ran to the other side of the room. "I'll give you all my money, all of it. Please just stay." These are Mr. Ben's words, everyone. I looked up, up and saw everybody laughing at him. Someone even had their phone out. He was humiliated and ran out, his legs shaking so hard he tripped and fell. Even Tracy was in hysterics, and after class she came up to me. That was so funny. I'll go to the dance with you just for that. The substitute hadn't even finished writing her name before a paper ball bounced off her head, and the whole class laughed, and I was the only one who didn't, because she was my mom. She'd made me promise that morning to treat her like any other sub. Nobody at school knew she was my mom, and she wanted to keep it that way, because she'd only started subbing a few weeks ago, and she didn't want me dragged into it. So I sat in the third row with my mouth shut, while her hand shook so bad, she knocked the chalk under the desk. "Just go home, lady," somebody yelled from the back. She picked it up, finished writing her name real slow, Mrs. Pruitt, and dropped it again. I made myself sit there and watch, because I'd promised to stay out of it. A kid named Bryce wadded up his worksheet and chucked it at the trash can behind her head on purpose, missing, and everybody clapped like he'd scored. "She smells like cough drops," one of the girls in front of me said, not even trying to be quiet. "Please open your books to page 40, my mom said, but it came out so soft that nobody moved. "Page 40, a boy copied her in a high squeaky voice, and I knew the shake in her voice was because she was about to cry. I had my hands jammed under my legs, and they were shaking now too. She gripped the edge of the desk and checked the clock. 43 minutes left. I didn't know how I was going to sit there for 43 more minutes. Bryce stood up. "I need a tissue," he said, and walked to the front, grabbed the box off her desk, and dumped the whole thing on the floor. My mom got down on her knees and started picking the tissues up one by one while the whole class laughed, and that was it. I was on my feet before I decided to be. "Knock it off, Bryce. She didn't do anything to you." The room went quiet so fast I could hear the clock ticking. "What did you just say?" he asked. I said it again, slower. "Sit down and leave her alone." Bryce stood there for a second, then sort of laughed. "Whatever," he said, and dropped back into his seat. "It's not even funny anymore," somebody muttered in the back. I got down on the floor and started gathering the tissues, and a girl named Hannah crouched down and helped me without a word. My mom watched us fit the box back together, then turned to the board and wrote page 40 again, and this time, her hand didn't shake. She taught the whole lesson straight through, and nobody touched her again. When the bell rang, she said, "Thank you, class," but she was looking right at me. I never told a single person she was my mom. I just let her be Mrs. Pruitt. We were driving home from a holiday and pulled up to Border Patrol when I suddenly got hit with a memory from the night I was adopted. I was 4 at this exact Border Patrol, feeling my adoptive mom's knife press against me while the guard checked our car. I looked up at her, and she was tapping her window, and it was the exact same rhythm I remembered from that night. The border guard waved us through, and I noticed we were heading through a thick pine forest for over an hour. The exact same forest I remembered driving through for hours. When my dad scratched his neck, I saw the teeth-shaped scar on his finger, and I suddenly remembered biting someone that night after they tried to put tape on my mouth. I knew I had to say something. Why have we never driven this way when coming back from holidays before? My adoptive mom went rigid and quickly said, "This road was blocked." My eyes widened as we passed a red barn, because I suddenly remembered feeling the duct tape come off my mouth right as I saw it. "What were you guys doing the night you adopted me?" My dad tightened his jaw. "We were just driving home from the agency, kiddo." He forced a smile. "Why do you ask?" "Because I remember driving here when I was 4. My mom's hands suddenly shook, and she said, "That's not possible. This is the first time we've ever been here." My dad pulled off the highway onto a dirt road through the trees, and I saw the exact small wooden house at the end of it that I remembered. He parked the car in the driveway, and I turned slowly in my seat to face them. "You kidnapped me. I wasn't adopted. I was kidnapped." They stared at me. "You're our son. We adopted you," I replied. "Then show me the papers." They stared at me in silence, unable to speak. I was watching my son being a goalkeeper at his football game when suddenly a striker's knee came down full speed on his forearm. I instantly ran out to the field and saw was sticking out of his skin. I patted his shoulder. "Don't worry, son. I'm sure this won't be permanent. You've still got a World Cup to play in one day." But when we got to the hospital, the doctors looked at us with tears in their eyes. "This is life-threatening. We'll need to amputate it." I looked at my son, who was silently looking at his hand like he could barely process the news. The doctors put the anesthesia mask over his nose, and when he woke up, he only had one arm. When we got home, I promised him I'd get a prosthetic arm, but when it finally arrived, he just stared at it. I tried lifting it up to him like it was a prize. "Son, look, the doctors say that once you get used to this, in around 6 months, you'll be able to play again." He shook his head without looking at me. "I'm not interested in that anymore, Dad." One night, a World Cup ad came on, and he got up and left the room without a word. I knew I had to do something. The next morning, I filled out the escort application for my son without telling him, and in the box that asked why my son should be chosen, I told them everything. 3 weeks later, an envelope came back with a World Cup crest on it, and I read it to him at the breakfast table. "Congratulations, your son has been selected to walk a player onto the pitch at the opening ceremony." He pushed it back across the table and didn't even smile. "There's cameras, Dad. Everyone will see my stupid fake arm. Then keep your sleeve down, walk the tunnel, and then we go home." He stared at the envelope, then nodded. 2 months later, we were in a tunnel under 80,000 people, while giants from 32 countries lined up beside my son. He kept tugging his sleeve down over his wrist, and my heart was slamming against my ribs because I needed this to go well. The captain at the front of the line turned and looked down at my son, at the sleeve and the wrist that didn't match. The tunnel went dead quiet. He lowered himself onto one knee and held out his hand. My son pulled his sleeve up past the prosthetic in public for the first time since the surgery and took it. A player representing France behind him stepped out of line and did the same. Then Brazil, then Japan, then Senegal. He turned back to me, grinning ear to ear. "Dad, they all wanted my hand. I'm never taking this thing off ever again." 6 months later, he sprinted off his line in his first game back and smothered a shot with both hands. I swung my putter at the neon blue golf ball and watched it drop cleanly into the hole, and Kevin's whole birthday party went quiet. That was my 5th hole-in-one in a row. Kevin walked over chewing a skewer of steak that had no business being at a cheap putt-putt course. "These are the baby holes. Do it at the windmill and I'll buy you lunch for the rest of the year." He circled me like he owned the place. "You're only here because my mom made me invite the whole class." I shrugged. "I'm only here for the free food anyway." He pointed his putter at a chef in a white coat searing scallops by the snack bar. "Chef Marcel makes my lunch every day. Sink the windmill and I'll pay him to make yours as well. All year, miss, and you keep packing that sad little bag." 2 of his friends snickered and trailed us to the windmill. I lined up and swung. The ball drifted across the green and stopped 2 inches short of the cup, right in front of the windmill. I could already see myself packing the same flat peanut butter sandwich every morning for another whole year. Kevin grinned. "Hope you enjoy packing your own lunch the rest of the year." He set up his bright yellow ball, barely looking at it. "My uncle owns this course. I've made this shot 1,000 times." He putted, and before the ball was even halfway there, he jumped up and pumped both fists. "That's how it's done." He landed so hard the whole windmill creaked and shifted, just enough to tap my ball forward. Every head turned to watch it crawl the last 2 inches, then it dropped. His own fist pump had knocked my ball in. A second later, his bright yellow ball reached the hole, bounced off my blue one, and rolled back out onto the green. The whole party erupted. Kevin stood frozen with his fists still in the air. His own chef walked right past him and handed me the lunch container, still warm. I took it and turned to Kevin. "Hope you enjoy paying for my lunch the rest of the year." My coach subbed me off and put his own son Kendrick in the game, and we immediately went from winning by 7 to losing by 12. Kendrick got 6 turnovers in 6 minutes, but coach kept him on for the whole game. In the locker room I asked, "Coach, we lost by 28. Why didn't you take Kendrick off when he missed 10 three-pointers in a row?" He squeezed his clipboard so hard I heard it crack. "Don't you dare question the coach. You're not playing the next 3 games for this." I looked over and saw Kendrick smirking. I sat for all 3 games and watched Kendrick miss every shot. Our coach yelled, "He's our star player," and drew dozens of plays for him, but he turned it over every time. I was furious and went to the principal. "We just lost 4 games in a row because of this." He was shocked as he clearly never heard of this, and next practice he walked onto the court and fired the coach in front of the whole team. Coach walked out and Kendrick's face dropped. Our new coach put me back in the starting lineup and Kendrick sat on the bench again. We made it all the way to the championship game, but when they called the starting lineup for the title game, Kendrick's name was on it. I couldn't understand why our coach would start him, but then I walked onto the court and saw who was keeping the official scorebook. It was Kendrick's dad, smiling at me like he'd planned something. I tried to just focus on the game, but Kendrick kept messing up. He'd turn it over every time he caught it and missed every shot he took. It was clear he shouldn't be playing, but despite Kendrick, we still won. After the final buzzer, I went to his dad to check the official stat sheet, but Kendrick was right there, smirking about something. And when I saw the stat sheet, my jaw fell on the floor. Every point I scored was given to Kendrick. He had 30 points credited to him. I had 0. I got in his dad's face. Why did that do that? They both just smirked. But then a scout came over and grabbed the stat sheet. He looked closely. What the hell is this? Why does this kid have 30 points? He scored 1 bucket all game and it was a free throw. He's like SGA, but worse. Kendrick's went red. His dad went pale. The scout turned to me and asked for my name. I walked into my kitchen and saw the kid who used to shove me into lockers sitting at our dinner table with his arm around my twin sister, Christy. "Hey," Christy said, jumping up and grabbing my elbow before I could turn around. She pulled me into the hallway and lowered her voice. "I know what you're thinking. He's different now. Please, just give him a chance tonight." For me, this was Brett, the kid who chipped my front tooth against a water fountain in 10th grade. So I sat down across from them to find out if he'd really changed, or if my sister was about to get hurt by the same guy who hurt me. Mom kept an eye on us from the stove while Christy carried the conversation. "Tell him about your summer job, babe." Brett talked about painting houses for his uncle, said the heat was brutal, but the money was good, the kind of small talk that almost made me forget who he was. He set down his fork and met my eyes. "I know this is weird, man. I'm not the same kid I used to be. I still think about that day at the water fountain, and I'm sorry. It sounded real, and he didn't flinch when he said it." Mom was smiling at him like he was already family. Christy squeezed my hand under the table, and I felt myself starting to believe him. I almost told him it was okay, but Mom's voice cut in from the dining room. "Christy, come grab the plates." The second my sister stepped out of the kitchen, his smile changed. "Christy showed me your old yearbook photos," he said, leaning back in his chair. "The ones from before I cracked your tooth." That same smile crept across his face, the one from the locker hallway. "She actually thinks I changed. You both did. That's the best part." My tongue went to the chip in my tooth before I could stop it. "You're not gonna say anything. You never do." For 10 years, he was right. But Christy was standing in the doorway with a stack of plates, and she'd heard every word. The plates shattered on the floor. Brett spun around in his chair and started to say her name. I was on my feet and swinging before he got it out. Punch. My fist caught his mouth and I felt something crack. He went over backward off his chair, and when he pulled his hand away, his front tooth was chipped. I stood over him and laughed in his face. "Now we're even." He scrambled up and ran out the front door with his hand clamped over his mouth. My friends and I started a game of cops and robbers, and 3 of us ended up in real handcuffs. Robbers wore all black and ski masks, and cops wore blue shirts. While we were picking teams, our friend Felix started panicking. "I got a bad feeling about this, guys. Something can go really wrong." I said, "Felix, you got a bad feeling about everything. Nothing's going to happen." I tossed him a blue shirt. "Here, you're on our team." When dusk hit, we all met up at the block. Felix was fidgeting with his blue shirt. "I really think we should just play something else. This can get serious." "Chill, bruh. It's about to be fun." We should have listened. Instead, we started the game. The robbers pulled on their ski masks and took off running, hopping fences. I was a cop, so I was going yard to yard trying to tag people. Then I heard a police siren. A real cop car flew past me and turned onto our street. I froze. I was curious and ran toward it. Then I saw 2 officers with their guns drawn at 3 of my friends wearing ski masks. Their hands were up, terrified. One of them was sobbing. The cop said, "We got a call about robbers in the neighborhood." They screamed, "We're not real robbers. It's a game. Please." The officer looked at him. "If you're not a robber, then why are you wearing a ski mask and dressed in all black?" My friends were cooked. Another friend was screaming, "Someone call our parents!" The cops put handcuffs on them and shoved them into the cop car. My stomach dropped because we'd been running through backyards in the dark the whole night, and there was no way anyone outside our group even knew the game was happening. We all went to the police station. The rest of us cops were sitting in the waiting room. I turned to the group. "Who called the cops?" I was sick to my stomach. "Do you think they're actually going to jail?" Then Felix stood up and walked straight toward the interrogation room. An officer stopped him. "Where do you think you're going, young man?" He pointed at our friends. "I caught them. I called you guys because I'm a cop too. I need to interrogate them." My jaw dropped because he was still wearing his blue shirt. He'd been playing the whole time. The officer stared at him, then looked back at the rest of us in our blue shirts. "You guys are cops?" Felix nodded. The cops realized my friends in ski masks weren't lying and sighed. Then one of my friend's moms was already at the station, furious. She looked at Felix. "You called the police on my son?" Felix nodded confidently. "He was robbing the neighborhood, ma'am. I caught him. You're welcome." We all started dying laughing. My parents didn't let me watch Adult Swim, so I waited up until midnight on a school night. I'd been planning this all week because my parents thought Adult Swim was too violent. I went to bed at 9 with my phone under my pillow set to vibrate at 11:55. When the alarm buzzed, I held my phone to my chest, slid past my parents' room, and snuck downstairs. I dropped the TV volume to 2 and switched to channel 67. The Adult Swim bumper hit at exactly midnight, and Robot Chicken started. I bit a pillow so my laughs wouldn't wake anyone. The credits rolled and nobody came down, so I went for it. I tiptoed to the kitchen, shoved pizza rolls in the microwave, and watched them spin like ticking time bombs. A creak upstairs froze me, but nothing happened. I grabbed the
Real fans know the real experts aren't on TV, they're in groups. These guys don't know what they're talking about. Okay, this guy knows what's up. That's facts. Mute the talking heads, find your group.
Tray and made it back as Venture Bros started. By the third show, I'd stopped checking the clock. Then a flash of orange caught my eye. The sun was up. My phone said 6:58, and upstairs my parents' alarm started ringing. I scrambled, but 3 empty pizza roll bags were on the couch, and Riley Freeman from the Boondocks was screaming on the TV. My dad walked in holding his coffee mug and stared at the screen, then the couch, then me. My mom came around the corner in her bathrobe. "Are you serious right now?" My dad set his mug on the counter. "It's a school day." She walked over and turned the TV off. 2 weeks, no phone, no TV, no friends. It was worth it. I'd trade 2 weeks of grounding for Robot Chicken, Venture Bros, and Boondocks any day. A kid 2 grades above me came up to me at Best Buy and shoved a pair of AirPods in my hand. "I know your dad has money, so be a good boy and buy these for me." Jackson was known as the school thief, so I asked him why he doesn't just steal this like always. He instantly grabbed me by the collar. "Because I'm 1 strike away from getting a jail sentence, but if you don't buy these AirPods for me, you're 1 strike away from the hospital." He brought his fist inches to my face, then dropped me down. I pressed the AirPods to my chest and walked to the counter while Jackson pretended to browse. I got to the till and told the cashier everything, and she immediately looked past me. Jackson was holding an AirTag in his hand, like it physically hurt him not to put it in his pocket. The cashier narrowed her eyes, then nodded at me and slid a fake receipt across the counter. She stepped aside to make a call, and I grinned and grabbed the AirPods like I'd paid for them. Jackson snatched them from my hand the second I turned around, and he shoved the receipt in his pocket. "I'm glad you know what's good for you, wimp. Now remember, try anything and 1 strike." He balled his fist, then smirked and strutted towards the exit. 1 AirPod was already in his ear by the time he stepped out, and the security alarm instantly screamed. Jackson's face dropped. "What the hell?" And 2 officers were already cuffing him and removing the AirPod from his ear. Jackson thrashed and pointed at me. "It was him. He made me do it." But the cashier stepped in front. "That boy never paid for anything." Jackson begged them to check the receipt in his pocket, so I pulled it out for him. A handheld fan purchased in 2018, $3.99. His face fell one last time, and he was dragged out screaming. I picked up the AirPods box and figured these would be perfect to wear for his trial. My mom grabbed her cleaning supplies and went to leave for her 10-hour shift as a cleaning lady for the 7th time this week. She tried to hug me goodbye at the door, but I just ushered her out because the popular rich kid Preston was over at my house, and I was too embarrassed for him to find out what she did. When she came back, Preston was still here, and I begged her to go change in her car so he wouldn't see her cleaning uniform. She dropped her head and slowly walked out. I felt guilty watching through the window as tears rolled down her cheeks. But then Preston asked me, "What are you looking at?" I quickly replied, "Nothing, just some broke loser changing in their car," and shut the blinds while Preston laughed. "That's so embarrassing. Imagine that was your mom or something." I chuckled with him. 2 days later, Preston invited me to his birthday party. My mom left for her cleaning shift, and 2 hours later, I put on my fake designer and walked to Preston's house. I pushed through the crowd looking for him. He told me, "Dude, my cleaning lady is here. We can throw drinks at her later." I laughed and told him I was down, then went into the kitchen for a soda. But that's when my face dropped in horror. My mom was on her hands and knees in her uniform, scrubbing Preston's floor with cleaning gloves. My eyes went wide, and I tried to walk away, because if someone saw this, I'd be humiliated, when suddenly she turned around. We locked eyes, and she mouthed, "I'm sorry, son," before going back to the tiles. My face was beet red, and that's when Preston rounded the corner. His eyes were wide with excitement. "You thought I wouldn't find out your mom scrubs toilets for a living." I felt my face burning with embarrassment as a few people looked on. "Your mom works for me. The only reason I invited you was so you could see this. You're so pathetic pretending your mom doesn't do dishes for rent money." He threw a glass of water at her and snapped his fingers. "Go scrub the bathroom." People were whispering as my mom looked at me with tears in her eyes and nodded in defeat. She walked to the bathroom with water dripping from her hair, but Preston snapped again. Without gloves, I was horrified and watched my mom slowly take off her gloves and noticed how raw her hands were from cleaning. She walked into the bathroom while Preston pointed and laughed. I was humiliated, but then I heard my mom trying not to cry behind the closed door. I realized everything she did was so I'd have a roof over my head, and something in me shifted. I didn't say a word and just grabbed a second set of cleaning supplies. I walked past Preston and opened the bathroom door, then knelt down and started scrubbing with my mom. She asked, "What are you doing?" I replied, "Helping you finish so we can go home." Her tears turned into a real smile as we cleaned together. Preston was still laughing, but now his friends weren't. Their faces dropped watching a 14-year-old on his hands and knees with his mother scrubbing toilets. toilets, and one by one they started leaving. Preston's smile vanished, and by the time the bathroom was clean, everyone was gone. I hugged my mom and said, "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so proud of you." Preston was in tears, and after Mom took her payment from the drawer, she tipped over the bucket of dirty water across his bathroom floor. He'd be cleaning this one himself, as we walked out with Mom in her cleaning uniform, and her head held high. My mom's a badass, and I'll never be embarrassed of her again. My mom and I were walking through the park when a woman with a child stepped in front of us and started screaming. She pointed at me. "You..." You're the father of this child. How dare you disappear on us? I had no idea what was going on. My mom grabbed my arm. "Is this true? Do you know this woman?" I put my hands up. "I've never seen you before in my..."